Right. Yes. How are you? You good?
Good, good.
So that's so amazing. I haven't done a call to someone from the US before, so this is it's
Really?
all indeed. Yeah, it's the first
Well,
time I've.
it's not anything that weird. In fact, I was talking to a UK guy yesterday. It's not like you're calling Narnia or Mordor or something like that. In fact, I was joking with the guy yesterday. I go, you got to remember that really we're just the ultimate spin-off from the UK. That's
Yeah.
all we really are. I mean, I joked about people. I go, look, whenever I see like the Olympics, the medal count from all the different countries, I go,
Yeah.
that's not what you should look at. Just look at the crown, right? You know,
Yeah.
all everybody that's in the crown, and then kind of throw in America just because, you know, we're independent. But come on, are we really? So what school are we doing this for?
Okay, so this is I'm going to be doing this for my University of Winchester
Ah,
in the UK. So a lovely old university in what used to be the capital of the UK.
right.
And I edit and write an online magazine, which generally began actually life as a music magazine, and it was open out more to the arts, and now it's sort of a lot of just generally by students for the students, variety of subjects.
Got it. Got
So,
it.
I mean, normally I'm a music journalist, so it's a bit new to me.
I would
Uh,
never pick up that you're a music journalist from the longer hair and the Bowie shirt. I would not pick up on that.
I know how subtle.
Yeah. So
But
how'd you get into this? How'd you how'd you find me?
well, I suppose the flat Earth movement is something that I think even just because I'm 21, so obviously, admittedly, 10 years ago, I probably wasn't as aware of just whatever was in the news as much. But I think the flat Earth movement is one of those things that 10 years ago I didn't know about it, but increasingly it's one of those movements that's kind of just gone from strength to strength and become more and more known. And I discovered you specifically through I think his name's James Buckley. He did an interview, I think, on a podcast. He's quite weird. He's kind of most well known as being a particular character in a British sitcom, but he
Right.
did like a podcast. He did an interview with you, which I watched, I suppose, a number of years ago now, and I
Yeah.
was just fascinated by you and I guess sort of what you believed, and it was just I kind of thought, oh well, I'll send this guy an email and see if he's up for
Sure.
talking. And I was
Why
like,
not?
yeah,
I know I
uh,
say yes to just about everything that comes out of the UK. I'm
yeah,
not kidding you. If there's a request that comes from the UK, I jump on it. To where because you never know when you're gonna do another one. I mean, I did one for Good Morning Britain. That was
oh, wow, yeah,
my most intimidating one because that was Piers Morgan, and it's like, oh
yeah,
god, not that
yeah,
guy. Because you see him tear apart people, right? And then all of a sudden
yeah,
it's like, oh yeah, he wants to talk to you. I'm going, it's a terrible idea. It's really really bad. And then I did Russell Brand.
oh
Uh,
wow,
yeah,
yeah,
that was one of those late. That's also another thing when you're a big enough celebrity person, they can call you last minute. Meaning,
yeah,
it's like, oh, hey, can we call you in 5 hours? I go, that'll be 3 a.m. my time. And then they go,
yeah,
so you'll do it, yeah? It's like, yeah, I'll do it, fine. And then the probably the most interesting one was I went over to the UK to do street activism because we had a van that was driving around all the towns of England. Well, not all the towns, obviously. And then went over to Europe. And then afterwards, somebody caught wind of it, and I went over and did Philip and Holly.
oh wow, yeah,
That was
yeah.
fun.
So
And
yeah,
yeah, it was like so. Yeah, I know. I'm totally in love with the UK. I have gotten to where I mean, it was. You got to remember over here we have a channel called BBC America,
yeah,
which shows a lot of popular British shows, Downton Abbey and Doctor Who and stuff like
yeah.
that. And I've always been a fan of British shows, but after I went over there a couple times and spent some time over there, and then came to the States, I had a completely new appreciation for it. Absolutely a new appreciation, and I get it. I understand why you call us the colonies still, and why you look at America the way you do. I get that now. And
Yeah, I suppose in especially in recent years, I guess it's there's some a disillusion is probably the nice way to
right,
put that with the
right.
states.
The
um,
the states, but as I said to the last guy, I said, there's United this and People's this, but there's only one great, which is Great Britain.
well, that's true. Yeah.
So
If that's the cross we have to bear,
yes,
I'll.
yes,
Just before I get into the questions,
yeah,
being fully transparent, it's not my, I don't know the word is, it's not my intention. If any question say, I don't think there is anything that sounds offensive. If there's any question I ask that kind of sounds like it's against your beliefs, whatever, just
no, no,
say.
no, no, no. You can
Um,
ask whatever you want. Remember, I've been doing this for 7 years now. So
True.
if you can come up with an original question, I'll be impressed. But
Yeah.
there's nothing off limits. You can take a shot. Like I've had trolls come at me, and so
Well,
don't.
yeah. Obviously, I believe, I guess, what would be considered the kind of mainstream. I don't believe in the flat Earth movement, but
Right.
I'm open-minded, and at the end of the day, as long as it's not inciting utter harm, at the end of the day,
No,
believe what you
no,
want.
it's fine. Seriously,
You know.
we can just roll with it.
So the first question, and it's quite a big question to open with, but I think a lot of the time, I think the flat Earth movement in general, but especially with you, it's kind of reduced to just you believe the Earth is flat. But from what I remember, in terms of the interview you did with James Buckley, was that there's a lot to it.
Right.
So I guess somewhat briefly, but also to elaborate, if that makes any sense, is what do you believe?
What does the world look like to me? What to me? Where do we live?
Yeah.
And I'm gathering you probably didn't see the Netflix documentary.
Is that Behind the Curve?
Yeah, did you see Behind the Curve?
I have seen Behind.
Okay, perfect. Well, that'll give you
yes.
some context.
Yeah.
So because some of it will sound repetitive, but the beginning of that show, the reason why they used the beginning of that show, which was interesting because that was some of the very first footage we shot, and we only do one take during a documentary. You are not living on a tiny little rock covered in a very, very small amount of water and even a smaller amount of smoke that's flying around in an impossibly huge universe, and you're not an accident. You're not just left over from the Big Bang. You are living in a building, a giant building that is, and again, a planetarium, a terrarium, a Hollywood soundstage that is so big that even our best and brightest didn't figure it out until almost 1960. And what we're talking about here is a building, and inside that building is a giant saltwater pond. And inside that pond are a bunch of islands, which we would call the continents. And again, we had nothing to do with the construction of this place at all. Whoever built it was way more powerful and older and sophisticated. With engineering skills that are octaves above what we can do. And when we figured it out in 1960, and by that I mean the United States and the Soviet Union and a few other nations, but those are the two big ones. The decision was made, which was, do you tell the general public or not? And the answer that I came up with was no, you don't. Because it back then, excuse me, the information technology wasn't up to snuff. You couldn't get the narrative out there fast enough. People forget that Roswell was only about 13 years earlier, and that scared the hell out of a lot of people. People don't understand that. The reason why the Pentagon walked back Roswell as fast as they did and, held up little pieces of sticks and foil. It's like, oh, yeah, this is actually what it was. It's like, what are you talking about? You took truckloads out of the desert, and the farmer all of a sudden got all this new stuff and he never talked to anybody ever again. But when that freaks somebody out, you realize in 1960, it's like, the repercussions, and we may get into that. The repercussions are so huge, you don't tell people. So yeah, you're living basically in a snow globe. What's outside of that snow globe? Is there space? Why would you think there's space? because
Yeah.
space is the big programming. In fact, you're probably just sitting on a desk with a whole bunch of other snow globes. And what's
Yeah.
outside of this world, we can get into it, but that's the big thing. You're living in a structure that has the illusion of space, very much like the simulations we make today. When regardless what you're playing, I'm not going to say like Minecraft, but like Fortnite or GTA or whatever the other games are, you're living in a world that's simulating a much, much bigger world, but you just don't know it. I mean, the part that blows me away, because, I come from the gaming world. I played video games for a living and was a video game producer, is that though all those games are perfectly tabletop flat, I mean, yeah, there's some hills and valleys and crap like that, but they're tabletop flat. And,
Yeah.
and people, it's like, what do you mean? I go, there's no curve built into those games. And it's like, why? Well, because no one would ever notice. So if they wouldn't notice there, why would they notice here? Why would
Yeah.
you build the curve in? Anyway, sorry, I ramble. Go. What do you got?
No, I mean, so yeah, I mean, one of my questions was, I guess, yeah, if if we're in this kind of not simulation, as you say, but in this kind of snow globe, I guess one of my questions was, yeah, are there others? And I suppose you've already said that, yeah, you'd have no reason to believe there wouldn't be.
Yeah, why would it be a one-off? If you're going to create a sandbox like this, because this is really what we're talking about here. Like I jump back and forth between video games every once in a while. Minecraft is considered a sandbox editor. That's really all it is. It's not even really a game. It's an editor. So and there's all sorts of Minecraft servers, right? No different than Warcraft or anything else. You can't fit everybody on the same server, so you have multiple servers. Art imitates life, so why would this place be the only? It's not going to be a one-off. But what makes it more interesting is because we don't know what's outside of this world. The other buildings outside of this world could be in completely different stages, and probably are, of advancement. It's like, oh, this is the Victorian era. Oh, these guys are still playing with sticks and rocks. Or these, or these are blue people. Oh, look, they do look like Avatar. That sort of thing. So.
So I mean, in terms of the actual kind of the physicality of it, I mean, other than, as you say, these islands and all that. I mean, like the sun, for example. What would that be, if you know what I'm trying to say?
Oh yeah, that's easy. So the sun and the moon. You're right. That's a great question. Okay. So you're living in a building. I only described what was on the ground. Up above you is no different than a planetarium. So everything that you see up above you are just lights on the ceiling. Stars, of course, very, very easy to do. We can do that in a planetarium all day long. The sun and the moon, however, are larger, but not as large as you might think. So the sun isn't 93 million miles away. It's probably only a few thousand miles away, and both the sun and the moon isn't 237,000 miles, or let's just round it to 240,000 miles away. It's way, it's about the same distance and the same size. There have always been these coincidences when it comes to localized space phenomena that science just waves off as coincidence. Like, why does the moon fit perfectly in front of the sun during an eclipse? It's like, well, because it's 400 times closer and 400 times narrower. It's like, wow, that's lucky. And then you take the moon, and what a lot of people don't understand. It's like you only see exactly one side of the moon. It's locked in, meaning you'd think that after 100 years you'd get like a half a degree turn or something. Like, no, the moon never shows even a freaking 100 yards difference. It's always showing you the exact same thing. And you ask scientists, they're like, well, it's just a coincidence how it's locked in like that. It's like, wow, that's pretty amazing. What about the craters on the moon, for example? Oh, I'm sorry, let me do the sun and the moon. So the sun and the moon are, let's say, about 50 miles wide. Very, very tiny. So all the diagrams, which is one of our drawbacks, because when we have to draw the flat Earth, for an illustration in a modeler or just draw it, we have to draw the sun and the moon big just to make it show up on the map. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see it. So, when we the normal models, the moon, which supposedly is 2,000 miles wide in reality, we have to draw it about almost 2,000 miles wide just to get to show, just so you can see it. And then when you draw the sun 2,000 miles wide, Well, the question is, well, if it's that big, why isn't everything lit up at the same time? It's because it's not that big. Well, why'd you draw it that big? It's because we have to, and then it just spirals into a whole other thing. But what I was getting at with the moon was, sorry, I got to bring up the moon craters really fast. The fact that the moon craters are all spherical should bother people, because that means that when they were hit, they came in at a straight angle, pretty much straight down. It's like,
Yeah.
well, how does that work exactly if you've got this huge gravitational pull from the Earth, right? Wouldn't they be deflecting? Why aren't there huge skid marks, or divots where it hits and drags and then takes off? The moon it's like it was decorated that way, which would make sense if you were going to build something like this from scratch. You would make it ornamental in a certain way, and then if the local population picks up on it, maybe they will, maybe they won't. But science is usually really good about wiggling their way out of it. They'll come up with anything but we'll get to that. So,
and I suppose so. The other big thing is you believe, right, that our kind of flat Earth is I guess surrounded by a wall of ice, right?
Right. So the only difference between the continents that you see in the maps and the only continent that doesn't make any sense is Antarctica. So all the continents. So again, if you want to know how the continents are laid out, anyone that's listening, or however you're going to do this, just look at the UN flag. That's the easiest thing. I mean, seriously, just type in the UN flag. The UN flag is the map we use. The question is, why is the UN flag laid out like that? That one's completely legit in terms of, it's just an AE, an azimuthal equidistant map. But the flat Earth map is completely discounted. But Antarctica, obviously, if it's laid out, if you take the globe from the North Pole and you squish it and you cut off all the jagged bits, and then the only thing you have left is Antarctica, which it's not an island continent about the same size as Australia sitting at the bottom. It's actually stretched around the entire outer edge. And it's much, much bigger than what people are led to believe, which is why it's off limits. The Antarctic Treaty, which was established almost around 1960, says that no corporation, no matter how much money is involved, is allowed to set up shop there. Any corporation in the world. And it's like, what are you talking about? In America, we can start fracking in that guy's backyard tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? It's not hard to do. We do these. Money. And I'll give you a reference on your side. If it's not just that companies can't go down there; they're not even allowed to talk about it. You're right. Antarctica is owned by no one. The entire find me another piece of real estate in the world that is not owned by someone. So I'll bring up like British Petroleum. Why isn't British Petroleum for the last 50 years, why haven't they been running full-page ads in the London Times saying, oh, how great it would be to set up shop in Antarctica and create jobs and do oil and gas down there? They're not even allowed to do that. And that's exactly what you would expect if you were going to hide. Because you would take, whatever ministers, and it would be under the guise of national security. So you go to the head of British Petroleum and say, okay, so you can't go down there. Here's the treaty, not allowed to talk about it. And whenever you decide to resign or retire or whatever it is, you have whoever it is call me at whatever, branch in your side of the world. And I'm going to tell them the same thing. You got to remember, the Antarctic Treaty is the only unbroken treaty in the history of the world. And it's not even up for review until 2041. Now, we're a lot closer to 2041 now than we used to be. But you remember, when they made that treaty, it was 1960. And they said, oh, yeah, by the way, 80 years from now, we'll review it. It's like, what? it's a long time. So, yeah. So, anyway.
So, something I suppose related to that, if I recall the James Buckley interview, I think you mentioned, is it Operation High Jump? Is that the name of it?
Yeah. That was, there were so many weird things, again, that happened. You couldn't even get away with it now because social media is so prevalent everywhere. Yeah. But in 1946, I believe, right after the Japanese surrendered and World War II was officially over. The European theater had already closed down, and the whole Japanese thing had happened. Right after that, you'd think, everyone would be going home, but the youngest admiral in the history of the Navy, Admiral Richard Byrd, he takes a full-blown carrier fleet and support ships and 5,000 troops down to Antarctica for scientific reasons, right? Which they don't really talk about. The speculation is just rampant on this. Part of me thinks because one of the stories has got to be true, or at least partially true, which was, if you remember Indiana Jones, the movie, people don't understand that Germany was doing things during World War II that other nations wouldn't. Meaning they were the big believer. They weren't kidding around. They were like, if they could find something to win the war, they don't care what it was. Yeah. If it's Frodo's ring, they're finding it. If Harry Potter's wand is on the mountaintop somewhere, they're going for it, right? The Ark of the Covenant, absolutely. Yeah. They would do this. And so the reason I mention this is during World War II, every country that was doing exploration in Antarctica left, save one, which was Nazi Germany. And it's like, why would Nazi Germany be doing stuff in Antarctica? Because they knew what was going on down there. It's like, are you kidding? These were people. You got to remember, at the end of the World War II, they had working jets and almost intercontinental ballistic missiles, which they were firing your way. They were testing cruise missiles on you guys. And the rumors, so when people were saying, there was rumors that they were working like on time machines, it's like, why wouldn't they? Right? Yeah. Seriously, if they had the ability, there was all this talk about, like the Vril Society, where they were to summon otherworldly like demons to fight for them. Of course they would. Why wouldn't they? There was nothing. There was an old saying over here. It's a sports saying by an American football coach I remember from years ago, Vince Lombardi, and this goes into the mindset, which is, he goes, winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. Yeah. And the way he said it, and he was one of those guys that had that intensity. It's like, this guy would lie, cheat, steal, and kill to win, and that was just a game, right? War, no. So anyway, Operation High Jump. My thought is that they went down there to try to root out the last of the Nazi base, and whatever happened, they took care of it, because by the time Richard Byrd went on his next television interview, his big one, which was in 1954, that wasn't even on his mind anymore. So in the 8 years that had passed, they had taken care of it, whatever it was. The rumor that I heard, which I love. I love little, because if I'm a big believer in good writing, good plot line, which is that Nazi Germany, or we'll just call them Germans, they asked an advanced civilization that was down there for asylum, and they said, "Look, can you help us out here?" Yeah. And they treated it like a high school dance, where it's like, it's like, fine, you can come with us. You can't get back into the gym. You're not. Once you leave, you can't go back. You can't go drinking in the parking lot and then go back in there and cause trouble. And that was it. We never heard from them again, which is why it was so interesting that the movie. Now there's a sequel to it. You ever see the movie Iron Sky? Yeah. Iron Sky, which, by the way, did not get received well over here, and hardly was released in any theaters for obvious reasons, right? There's certain things you could talk about, and there's certain things you can't. But when you have as many Jewish people that are in the production houses of the American media, and they're like, you're gonna what now? Wait, they're back. They were on the moon, and now they're attacking us again. No, we're not promoting this ever. So we'll go with Inglourious Bastards, but we're not gonna go down that road. So obviously touching on it, one of my sort of favorite aspects of history is obviously fascinated by the sort of Nazi occultism, I guess is the term it would be, and obviously looking at the Spear of Destiny and the Nazi Bell and stuff like that, and
obviously, yeah, within about 5 minutes of going down the rabbit hole, you sort of get to Heinrich Himmler and all the expeditions that he would send for the Holy Grail and that. And I remember I listened to one podcast where they talked about one theory, which I guess plays into this, which is the idea that obviously they were fascinated with trying to sort of trace their lineage back to like an old powerful Nordic race, and
Right.
then obviously other people say the Nordic race obviously was from another world, and they were the ones in the Antarctic. And I suppose do you therefore believe that they found, I guess we'll say Nordics, but but it could be whatever. You believe that they found.
Oh yeah. I do, but I don't think they fully could use it to their advantage for whatever reason. I mean, the rumors is that the Americans actually tried to engage this older civilization and got hit pretty hard by them, but Germany was in no position to make a deal that was going to help them. Obviously, here we are, 2022. They're not back. Some of Nazi Germany, of course, fled to South America. All those stories were absolutely true. They were a very the part, and this is a whole nother thing. The part that people don't get into is that the Roswell incident was probably not isolated, in that the early stories were that a saucer very similar to that one crashed somewhere in the soft dirt of Germany and didn't break apart. And the Germans just reverse engineered the hell out of that thing. And because, again, remember, I can't overstate this. Germany was taking on the entire world simultaneously. Japan, as an ally, they didn't really care about. That was just a distraction on the other side. It took the whole world to beat them, and the stuff the tech they were coming up with. I mean, yes, of course, German engineering, yeah, great, Mercedes and BMW and Volkswagen, but they shouldn't have been that good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were way above. They were fighting way above their weight limit on this, and they were pulling it off to where, I mean, there were some critical strokes at the end of that war. One of it, which being D-Day, which was, I mean, let's face it, if the Americans didn't get involved at the end, that was it. Germany was, England was done. Russia was already on fire. They had suffered incredible losses. But sorry, I don't mean to digress, but there was this one moment, if you ever watched the movie Patton, which was the Germans were so, they bet everything on that Patton was going to lead D-Day. So wherever Patton was going to be, that's where it was going to be. So it was a bluff. So they put Patton out in the middle of nowhere. And it's like, okay, we're concentrating on him. It's like, oh no, we're going into Normandy. And they're going, damn it. I mean, but if they had bet differently, if they had put everything on Normandy, then the whole thing would have been different. So anyway.
So yes, I mean, therefore I take from that you sort of believe that they got, outside during the war, before they were sort of trying to get asylum, would you say therefore they discovered another power or another race and that helped them in terms of technology?
I do. I think some of them got out and used it to their advantage, and were taking, again, if you ask for asylum outside of this world, well, that's it. You can't. You're not going to be able to do the mischief you did over here, because now it's a whole different thing. Beforehand, you were the tip of the spear in terms of cutting edge technology, and you were using that for nefarious purposes. Outside of this world, nah, you're just everybody else, and they probably disarmed them on top of it. It's like, you can keep all the black outfits, but that's about it. You're not bringing in any of your stuff. And come on, look at what happened after the war, where the Soviets took half of, again, one of those weird things about war, which is if you're super intelligent and you're on the engineering scientist side of things, you have a physical value to you, a monetary value. And so you don't get executed, right? There's no war crimes for you. It's like, no, you're an asset. So we're going to take half the scientists and move over in the Soviet Union, and the other half of the scientists we're going to move over to the States, including Werner von Braun. And both sides, what do we think they did? They immediately developed, started escalating the rocket technology. You know,
Yeah.
they used basically both sides took the German V2 rocket technology and turned them into both rockets that supposedly were going to, help with space travel, and the, missiles that just kept getting bigger and bigger
Yeah.
and bigger. So, yeah, it was a
I mean,
wild time.
yeah, because I mean, yeah, yeah. Obviously, you're fully correct. I mean, it makes me think of I can't remember what they're called. Is it Unit 731? It was more
But that's your
direct.
that's the British side, right?
No, that's it was a Japanese unit during the war that did sort of horrible amounts of experimentation. But people who are still alive put their limbs in like liquid nitrogen and then hit them to see all
Oh
sorts of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
experiments.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And,
Let's.
and yeah, after the war, the scientists didn't get executed. They had to deal with the Americans, and
Oh yeah.
suddenly, the Americans, yeah.
Yeah, and by
Yeah,
the way, and I don't want to go necessarily down a dark path, but come on, all the medical experiments that the Germans did, it's like
yeah,
the Americans say, "Oh yeah, well, no, we burned all those records." The hell, you burned all those records.
yeah,
The dollar value of that research was priceless, and in
yeah,
our case, all pretty much unrepeatable, right?
yeah,
You had access to research that you couldn't even begin to start over here.
yeah,
And so it's interesting, everything has this, war is still about money and resources, but it's also about information. And
yeah,
but you have to put on a good face for the public. You got to show,
yeah.
it's like, oh, it's outrageous, and of course we're going to punish these people. Well, not those scientists over there. No, we're going to keep those.
Yeah.
But you people, we're in Nuremberg for you, and it's like, oh wow. Yeah, it's
It,
this.
yeah, I mean, it reminds me of an article I read probably a couple of months back, which I think was about a book that obviously Joseph Mengele had written, which is really controversial because
Right.
you have a lot of especially American doctors who don't want to use it, but on the other hand, it's seen as one of the most sort of beneficial because it's full of information
Oh yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So
Well, here's one for you really
Yeah.
quick. The movie with Sean Penn, 21 grams. You know about that movie? Where
I've heard of it, but I don't know.
the Germans, that was just a side issue the Germans came up with, because they measured everything, right? They measured and counted everything. Probably too much. But some people say it's a myth. It's like, I don't think it's a myth. And that is because if anyone was going to do it was the Germans, they accidentally they noticed that when people died, they immediately lost 21 grams of weight.
Oh, the soul.
Yeah, the whole soul thing.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
going, what?
Yeah.
And it only happened with humans, not animals. And it's like, what? Because 20 grams, that's not, it's not nothing. It was instantaneous. It's like, is it an energy weight? Is it a magnetic field thing where the body becomes lighter and people are, there are certain things that science doesn't know what to do with. So they just don't talk about them. 21 grams, the 100th monkey effect, which leads into a whole, do you ever hear about that one?
I don't think so.
Oh, look up that if you get a chance. The 100th monkey effect, that was done off some islands in the Pacific Rim. And again, science comes up with, scientists make up all sorts of crap. It's like, hey, let's try this, right? So they were throwing potatoes to monkeys on these islands, and they showed them, or the monkeys kind of figured it out initially, but I think, people were down on the beach. It's like, look, if you wash the sand off the potatoes, they taste better, right? And the monkeys started to learn this. The monkeys are pretty smart. And what was weird was, and again, you can look it up. Some people say, "Oh no, it's a myth." It's like, no, that's exactly how it would happen. If it was some sort of simulation, and that was once about the 100th monkey figured it out, all the monkeys figured it out. Meaning, once it got to 100, it was like that monkey over there that wasn't even talking to those monkeys. Oh yeah, and those monkeys on those islands over there, which are miles away, they are now figuring this out. Which would go into an upgrade type scenario, whereas if it was beneficial for monkeys to learn how to wash off, the potatoes, all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, somebody, the system approves it, and all monkeys now know how to wash sand off potatoes, and or here I'll get one more for you, which is neuroscience and free will. Look that up. There's a wonderful wiki entry on this, where again, scientists was like, let's hook up electrodes to people's heads and have them choose numbers on a keyboard, right? and there's a counter up above, like seconds and tenths of seconds.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, pick a number between 1 and 9 on the keyboard, right? And people they noted not only when they hit the number on the keyboard, but they had the people make a mental note of when they decided to pick the number, right? Because normally it was fairly instantaneous. It's like pick a number between 1 and 9. It's like 5, right? The second you think of 5, well, that's when you note the timer. What's weird is that the computer was figuring out. It never, of course, knew exactly what number they were going to pick, but it knew when they were going to pick the number 8 seconds before they picked it. So if you say, if I say pick a number between 1 and 9, you think 4, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the computer knew that 8 seconds ago, but that's impossible because you just thought. In fact, I just asked you the question: how could the computer know this? It goes into the whole predestination thing that science hates so much, which is, are we not? It's something I've been toying with, and we'll get to your question here, which is, it's not only could you possibly living in a virtual reality, you could be living in a pre-recorded virtual movie, which saves a whole lot of resources. If you've done enough stuff with virtual stuff, you realize that you can save a whole bunch of resources. It's sort of like people that are watching. You'll get this if you ever play any games. People, the kids that don't actually play Fortnite, they just watch other people playing Fortnite, on YouTube, right? Well, you realize that when you're watching somebody play Fortnite on YouTube, it's almost identical to what you would see in real life. You don't know the outcome ahead of time, but the resources are tiny compared to, you're just watching a little MP4, right? That's, on a thing, but in real time, it would be this massive server thing and all these resources. But a pre-recorded movie, that's nothing. So anyway, sorry.
I mean, no, by all means, ramble away. It's utterly fascinating. I suppose, it kind of leads into another of my questions, which is, so I guess, would you say we have free will at all, or like controlled free will to an extent? Or
I think if you're a big sci-fi fan, or if you know sci-fi at all, and I'm about as deep into sci-fi as you can get. I believe in free will, but only in the standpoint that you made the decisions already. So what you're in right now, in fact, there's a line from The Matrix that talks about this. It just went over the head of everybody, which was when Neo was talking to the Oracle in the second movie, and he goes, I can't make that choice. And she goes, you didn't come here to make the choice. You've already made it. You're here to understand it. And what I mean by that, I'll give you a movie reference. Let's say you're a director of a movie and you have total control, right? You have control over casting and script and editing, everything you can think of. You have total control. You make the movie from beginning to end. It's absolutely everything you wanted it to be. Is because, of course, the last director ever do that was, I think, Orson Welles. When he made Citizen Kane, he had total creative control. Literally, no one could talk to him about anything. But you finish shooting the movie, and then you run down the stairs too fast, you bump your head, and you have temporary amnesia, right? And a day later, it's like, hey, the premiere's up. It's like you go to the premiere anyway, right? And people are like, oh no, you're going to be fine. You're sitting there. Everyone around you is just watching a movie, but to you, it's the most perfect movie ever made, because every decision on that screen you agree with. You're like, it's absolutely perfect. That's who I would have chosen. That's the music I would have used. Everything's perfect. So why wouldn't you do that in something like this? Meaning, think of it like, because one of the big drawbacks about a big, let's call it a big MMO or a big simulation, is that we make now is the randomness and the disappointment, right? There's always bad things that happen. There's always people that bail and things go wrong, and you spent all this time, Warcraft people are notorious for it. You spend hours and hours on a big raid and it just collapses, and it's like, oh my God, I'm not getting that time back, right? What if you set it up all ahead of time to where you had the peaks and valleys, but at the end, the hero's journey was completed? What if you could make all those choices? And by that, it's an easy thing to do. Let's say you're outside this world and you're picking everything to go. You'd pick the major points. You win a local contest here, you get married here, you have kids, here's your career, blah, blah, blah. All the little stuff gets filled in. You don't have to choose that you're going to brush your teeth 15,000 times. You don't have to choose that you're going to, have a shower or vacuum this or whatever. All the little things are filled in for you. But the big choices, get back to your free will thing. The big choices, you make them, but I think you make them before you get here.
Yeah.
It's just conservation of resources. That's how I would do it. All you need, the reason why I think it works is because all you need to make it work practically is a memory block. That's it. So it's the old metaphor, which people say it's a dead metaphor, but I disagree. You can't have your cake and eat it too, right?
Yeah.
Sort of like you can't live your life. Nobody remembers what happened before they got here. Right? Billions of people, nobody remembers what happened. Of course, you got people who are like, no, I was Cleopatra. No, I was Napoleon. Whatever. Yeah. You might have been, but no one remembers it clearly. Everybody comes in out of a fog, right? At this young age, and you learn things. But it's interesting that again, nobody remembers it. So what are you looking at? Everyone, it's the same experience for everybody, but it's different. So yeah, I think the free will aspect is done beforehand because it's more efficient. It's the most efficient option to do. If you were, we've been trying to, and it's got to be flawless. Meaning, there was a movie. You want to look up a great movie, completely underrated movie. Robert Redford in The Discovery. With I can't remember some of the supporting cast, but it's good, and it's about a scientist. It's a little bit of a ripoff of Brainstorm from the 1980s with Christopher Walken, but the concept was a neurological scientist, figured out mathematically that there was an afterlife, and when he did that and released it, the papers, it's like, I figured out something like 40 million of the people in the world committed suicide almost immediately, because if you knew there was an afterlife and this afterlife was better than your current life, why would you stay?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so one of the most realistic things I've ever seen in cinema was a part later on in the movie where they progressed their research and finally they figured out how to record human thought. And of course they recorded the human thought of someone that had died a day earlier. And they noticed that he was going through parts of his life and correcting mistakes in a virtual world, right? And as soon as they saw that, Robert Redford goes, you realize what we're looking at right now. He goes, burn it all. He goes, destroy everything, destroy the tapes, destroy the machines. I want all this research just wiped out. Because if that had gotten out into the general public, the civilization would collapse almost immediately, because people are, sorry, I don't mean to digress too much. People are inherently lazy, really, really lazy, and they don't like the struggle. The reason why they carry on is because they don't think they have any other option. If you told them there was an option, it's like, oh, wait, why are you suffering so much? The afterlife is great compared to this. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna go find a bridge somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's how it would go down. So, which is why you have to absolutely make sure that part is bulletproof. You hide that, you make sure that as far as the system goes, nobody comes back and has an absolutely clear recollection of what the afterlife is, or the outer world is.
Yeah.
So sorry.
So I mean, so I suppose, looking at it in terms of obviously, yes, as a conspiracy. I mean, how high level? Is it any kind of scientist knows? Is it like, is everyone that working at NASA kind of knows this? Is it?
No, it's the opposite. This isn't like the Manhattan Project, where they had hundreds of thousands of people refining uranium for the first atomic weapons that the United States used. Now, they hid that through compartmentalization. And the fact that people were ignorant. I mean, you've got people refining uranium in the 40s for a weapon that doesn't exist yet. So no one's going to put that together. They're going to be like, it's like, what are we refining? Uranium. What for? I have no idea. Only a few people at the top knew that it was going on. When it comes to the whole flat earth thing, need to know is a term I throw around a lot. And also that less is more, meaning why would you tell anyone what the world is? So scientists, no. 99.9% of NASA employees, no. They why would you tell them? We're talking about a military operation here in order to keep this thing a secret. So, in fact, the only guys that would know at NASA. Now, are there some super, super rich people that probably know? I call them the authority because there's no real name for them. The first rule of power has never, ever changed, and that is stay hidden. So when people talk about, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and Bill Gates, it's like, no. Those guys are new money, right? One of your terms. They are newly minted, right? Compared to everybody else. No, I'm talking about families that go back hundreds and hundreds of years in Europe that you could have, like Bill Gates might be able to schedule a meeting with one of these, families. Right, but he's not going to be rubbing elbows with them on a regular basis, right? He's just useful to them. These are people that don't even look at numbers in terms of money. When it comes to NASA, there was a wonderful movie I talked about in the clues called Capricorn 1, which was done in the late 70s. And the concept is that NASA screwed up something and they had to fake a Mars mission because they knew the rocket was not going to work. It was just not going to work, but they had already committed. There was already money involved, so they decided to fake it. And in the process of faking it, you learned a lot about who had to know and who didn't. And the only guys that really had to know were the telemetry guys, if you know anything about telemetry. Meaning, it doesn't matter if you made the fuel systems or you polished this or engineered that. It's the guys that track the rockets. Doesn't matter if it's manned or not. Rockets, once they leave visual range. So when a rocket goes off of visual range, you have telemetry. Where does it sit in 3D space? Okay, well, it's 20 miles that way, and it's 7,000 feet up, and it's going at this speed. Those are the only guys that have to know anything. And the whole concept around Capricorn 1, there was this great scene where a young telemetry guy wrote his own program because he thought that something was off. And he figured out, he was going to his superiors, it doesn't make sense. He's going, I've got the transmission from this thing at 70 miles away, at an Air Force base on the ground in Nevada. And that was it. He was done. I mean, there was one of the spookiest scenes ever where he was erased from existence. It wasn't that they killed him. You didn't even see him die on screen. His apartment was rented out. His apartment was cleared out and replaced with a woman that they simulated to where she'd already been there for years, to where even the magazine labels, and there was no record of him anywhere. That he was gone. And that's the one movie quote which I love so much, which is when you get to a certain level, they can lock you in a room and throw away the room. You're never going to recover from that stuff. So, long story short, is that very, very few people have to know the whole picture. They don't even tell the astronauts nowadays what exactly is happening. I believe that they told the Apollo astronauts, which is why they became such basket cases. They all crawled into bottles. They were recluses. They were just freaking wrecks. And I think because when you psychologically profile heroes like that, the Right Stuff, a great movie on the American astronaut recruiting tool. These guys wanted to be heroes. These were Boy Scouts. These were people that stand up, square jawed and looking at the sky and we're gonna do that. Buzz Lightyear type of stuff. Yeah. And when they found out, again with Capricorn 1, they pulled him out of the capsule at the last minute and said, "Yeah, you're not going, and here's why." Right? And the astronauts very quickly said, yeah, we're going to do the right thing, and we're going to rat out NASA, which meant they were going to be hunted down. Yeah. These guys went along with the program, but there's only so much false accolades you can go with, right? If you're a stand-up guy, people can pat you on the back, and you might be able to take credit for certain things, but you got to remember, over here, we had full-blown parades that went on for miles. For these guys, through the major cities, New York and DC and there were schools named after these guys, right? While they were still alive, named after, it's like these were the heroes of the day. These guys cracked. They're like, and of course, they were told under no certain circumstances because they're all military officers. There's no civilians. they're like, look, they're under a different set of rules. Meaning, if you do the wrong thing, it's treason. And I don't know what treason is over there where you are. Treason is a bad thing over here.
Yeah.
It's not like you go to court. No, you're taken off to a black site somewhere until they can figure out what to do with you. So anybody after that, the astronauts that we have now, which again, they're all just military officers, most of them Air Force, is they're treated, what I say is they're treated no different than spies, right? So a spy, you've seen the movies where it's like spy. It's like, okay, you're going to take this rifle, you're going to point it out this window, you shoot this guy next to a hotel at this particular time, and that's it. Here's a photo of the guy, right? You're not allowed to, the political backstory, the intrigue involved. They don't care. The spies are like, it's above my pay grade. I'm not going to ask. I'm just going to shoot the guy, right? Everything else is for somebody else, right? That's how compartmentalization works. So when the astronauts, it's like, oh yeah, you're going to fake this thing in this vehicle, and you're going to say these lines, and it's above your pay grade to even ask, and it works out better because their conscience is clear. It's like, oh yeah, that way they can smile, they can joke around. There's not a heavy conscience. They can just do whatever they want to do, and it has worked. That has worked since they do. I will say this about the authority: they learn from their mistakes, and so everything that is fake now, it is very tidy. Their production value is rubbish, absolute rubbish. But we'll get to that.
So I mean, when you look at stuff like obviously astronauts and that going up to the ISS and stuff like that. So what do you believe in happens in terms of that? So obviously they're not going.
No, and by the way, there's a wonderful show that you should look up. It predates you just a little bit, but it was from a few years ago, and I put it on my channel. I'll send you the link to it if you want. But I know you can find it on YouTube. It's called Space Cadets. Did you ever hear about that show? It was a British show, reality show, where they psychologically profiled a bunch of people for a fake British space program. And they took these guys out to an abandoned RAF base that they had converted and made it look like a Soviet base, well, a Russian base. So they pretended to fly them from, the whole thing was fake, where they fly them from London to Russia, and really all they did was they did circles around England for a few hours, and then they just landed back down in London, and then they took them in these trucks, fake Soviet trucks. It was straight out of Mission Impossible. And at the end, 3 of these people were going to go into a fake space shuttle and be in space, right? And when they they simulated to where those 3 people. Now there were, I think, 2 or 3 actors. They were part of the big group, because you have to have people that are inside. They're kind of helping it along, so there's no doubt, right? And at the end, the finale was heartbreaking because these people were that shuttle. And again, fake space out the windows and the whole 9 yards. And they were buying it to where the finale was, they were very British. They wheeled them into a big sound stage with a full-blown audience. And when the smoke cleared and they came out, imagine that. You're walking out of a space shuttle. You think you're in orbit. And you're walking out into a sound stage. And you realize it was the biggest prank of all time. But the point is they did it. And they did the whole thing for, I think, less than £5 million.
Wow.
The whole thing. Wow. And so what, if you were to do that for the ISS, and this is just for TV people, this isn't fake, pretend, convincing people they're actually up there. It was easy because all you do, first thing is you obviously do not put anybody on the top of a pile of liquid explosives. Nobody's on the rockets ever. You just launch the rockets, which is why when the Challenger blew up in '86, that was a little troublesome. You had to put them into witness relocation, and then we found pretty much all but one of them later, but that's a whole nother thing. And then you put them off to an Air Force base, whatever it is, and you have them, run the simulations and whatever. Or you can do a combination of green screen. We used to do zero-G simulator planes, which is just planes that go parabolic and then knife down. It's basically it seems like it's zero-G, but you're really just falling without wind. That's all you're doing. It's really weird. And then that's it. You shoot that footage, and you make mistakes, horrible mistakes, because because $60 million a day apparently isn't enough to buy top-notch effects. I mean, the fact that you're using immense amounts of hairspray on the women, their hair goes straight up like the Bride of Frankenstein, or the green screen effects fail, or the virtual reality layers fail. So, there's people. I honestly, I applaud the fact that NASA is as bold as they are trying to get away with it, but they forget that there are so many nerds out there, look, me included, that there's sites out there called moviemistakes.com, where you will find, look, if a coffee cup moves from here to here, within a frame, and the character didn't move, some guy at 3 a.m. in his underwear would be like, look, that coffee cup moved, I'm gonna post this, right? And then it's out there forever. You again, this predates you, but the original Lord of the Rings, the first movie, when the hobbits were leaving the Shire, there's a famous scene, you can find it, where there's a car driving off to the corner of set, right? And you got to remember, they made it through all of principal shooting, all of editing, all the different things, and that nobody saw it because everyone was focusing on the freaking hobbits. It waited to the theater, and then all of a sudden someone's like, hey, what the hell is that, right? And it's like, oh my God. So if those sort of things happen, again, because film production is, everything's shot out of sequence to save money for cost issues, there's always going to be issues there. So the fact that NASA tries to do things and tries to do them live, anyone in show business will tell you don't do anything live if you can help it, because there's these huge mistakes. So when it's like, and I know it's like, yeah, you want to talk to the students, so let's talk to answer questions from the grade school kids, right? Yeah. What could go wrong, right? But the thing is, everything is recorded now. The another movie line, everything on the internet sticks. And once it's out there, it gets copied so many times, and we catch as much stuff as we can, which is why we had so much success, because we had a lot of people that were just, once you start scouring a little bit of the footage, you go after all, we've looked at, I think, pretty much every stitch of NASA footage ever since the 60s. So, wow, yeah. And there's a lot of it. So anyway, sorry.
Yeah. I suppose it's probably a foregone conclusion to ask, but obviously quite relevant. Obviously recently, the James Webb post.
Yeah, we had him on one of our Webb himself. We had him on one of our programs. What I think is interesting is, and we've dissected that thing. I mean, as we're talking right now, there's more and more videos being created by our circles. But what's interesting was that how quickly they shut down that whole program. The micrometeor that just came out. It's like, oh no, it's damaged. Sorry, we don't even know if it's salvageable. It's like all that time and billions of dollars, and it's like what? Because the images that you were putting out there were crap. Hubble was bad enough, and then when this thing came out, I'm going, oh, whatever. For us, the telescope stuff, it is the imagery that they put out there. In fact, I'll give you a great example. Things you don't know. People that forget because it's older than you. The first blue marble shot ever taken of the full Earth in disk. You can look it up. Blue marble from space, 1972. First shot ever taken from Apollo 17. And it's like, what happened to Apollo 8 through Apollo 16? Why never they didn't take a shot, right? But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is the second blue marble shot wasn't taken until summer of 2015. So what happened? You went most of the 70s, all the 80s, all the 90s, 2000, 2010, halfway to 2020. Then you take a second blue marble shot, and this is not myth. They announced it to us because it was the summer we came out. We started talking about this stuff, and all of a sudden Obama, it's like, second blue marble shot, taken. And it's like what? It's like, what are you talking about? And Scott Kelly, the astronaut, apparently wrote the story from the space station, right? And it's like, no one's going to question this. We went 43 years. Nobody took a blue marble shot except for, the second blue marble shot ever. And again, it just slays me. Or the, oh hell, I'll give you a great image. Oh no, two quick stories. One was I was running a tech support department in Boulder, Colorado years ago, 2001. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to, the internet was not new, but it wasn't exactly what it was now.
Yeah.
You couldn't finish it like you could in the 90s, but it was you could actually finish it in the 90s, believe it or not. You could actually go to all the sites that actually were. It's like, oh, isn't there anything else? So I thought, okay, I'm going to do something iconic. I'm going to put different shots of the Earth on the tech support monitors. It's like, yeah, it'd be kind of fun. Just type in string after string after Boolean string saying, Earth from space, different things of Earth from space, world from space. And I kept coming with exactly one image, which was the first Blue Marble shot from 1972. There were no other shots out there. It's like, what? How are there no other shots? And I remember verbally back in 2001, I didn't know anything. I was like, NASA, you suck. It's like, how bad can you be doing this? To the point, a few years later, when the first iPhone came out, and you can look this up, the iPhone had the same idea I did. It's like, let's put a cool shot of the Earth on the iPhones, the very first iPhones. Well, they didn't want to use the Apollo 17 shot because, like, that's from 72. There's got to be other shots. So they hired a NASA guy to Photoshop up a brand new image, which is called the Robert Simmons image, or the first iPhone image, and it was pretty good, right? It was pretty good, but there was a problem with it in that there was a cloning tool issue. Meaning it seemed like, and you got to pick on Americans, lazy, which is it seemed like he had to finish it on a Friday or something, and he was running out of time. So when he got to the Southern Hemisphere, he just took the cloning tool and cloned all these clouds in the Southern Hemisphere. And it's like, oh, right on, happy hour. And he took off. And we looked at this, it's like, what the hell? I mean, it wasn't even close. I mean, he cloned the hell out of the Southern Hemisphere. Why is that a point? The point is, years later, when I went to the Houston Space Center in Texas, when I went inside the space shuttle exhibit, full-blown space shuttle on the back of a 747, what did I see off to the side but that iPhone image blown up to like 3 feet by 2 feet? Well, it's like, well, it makes sense because NASA engineer did it, so NASA has the rights to do it. But it's like, why is this in here? You constructed this for the iPhone. Why isn't Robert Simmons' name here? In fact, Robert was interviewed because the iPhone image was iconic. So he was interviewed by different people. And we've got him on audio. And it was a great quote. He was going, well, it is photoshopped because it has to be. Because there was nothing else to use except for, he had to manufacture it from scratch. So there are so many instances of those images out there to where even in the clues, I mentioned, I go, forget about still shots. Find me a moving video shot of an astronaut doing a 360 with the camera running. Anywhere to where, and I had to call him out. I said, it's the ultimate fourth wall, right? On any show. It's like you never ever show the fourth wall because there is no fourth wall. And here, in fact, I'll throw something at you real quick, which is there's something every once in a while I will use this image in speeches. I can dump it in. I'll dump it into Skype real fast for you. This is a shot from Apollo, for example.
Right.
It's a great shot. It's just a random shot. It's date and time stamped by NASA below, right? And this is from Apollo 12. Right. The longer you stare at this photo, it's a beautiful shot, wonderful shot, iconic shot, perfect shot. But that's just it. When you start staring at it, it's a high def shot. You can zoom in anywhere you want. There's a lot of things wrong with this. And because Americans don't know physics and they don't know engineering and they don't know anything, they didn't get it. The first thing is, if it's one light source 93 million miles away, all those shadows should be running parallel to each other, and they should never never intersect. Well, that's a problem because they're all going to intersect, like the hot spot from maybe a studio light that's, I don't know, about 30 yards behind the guy that's taking the shot. Second is there's footprints everywhere, right? Footprints, great, perfectly uniform 3 to 4 inches of ash along this entire surface. Interesting, of course, that nobody took a shovel and dug down to see how deep that ash really was, but who cares? Yeah. There's footprints everywhere, but there's no blast crater underneath that engine at all, right? Here's the third one. That wonderful little satellite dish there, right? That was 1969. That's not nowadays. This isn't DirecTV. This is 1969. That thing's running off a car battery, right? It's got maybe a range. This is not classified tech. You know, you can look that thing up. It's a VHF transmitter. Maybe has a range of 50 miles. And that's Morse code, right? And this thing is doing 10 frames of color video a second and perfect two-way communication simultaneously. Wow. How in the world is this happening? The no stars thing, I let people go because everyone's going to say it's a camera setting. It's like, oh, there's no stars. It's like, no, there's no stars because the mathematical calculations would have been way too tough. Meaning, because it's date and time stamped, if the belt of Orion is in the wrong place, some nerd in his underwear is going to be like, the belt of Orion shouldn't be over there. It should be over here. So somebody made the decision. They're like, yeah, so no stars. We're not going to do stars. It's like, how do we get away with that? But the big thing that most people don't get right here is the spacesuits. These were backpack, self-contained spacesuits. And I don't care about the heating and cooling or oxygen or nitrogen. Well, the nitrogen's a whole other thing. It's like, where'd they get it? Or the oxygen scrubbers or anything like that. Oh, I'm sorry. We could mention the oxygen scrubbers, which is, if you know anyone that scuba dives. You know anyone that scuba dives?
I don't personally know.
Yeah, that's all right.
But, yeah.
The biggest thing for anyone that scuba dives, the only thing they care about is how much time they have left. Everyone wears a wristwatch and they all check it. It's like, well, we have 18 minutes left. We have 12 minutes left. We have 6 minutes left. We got to get the hell out of here, right? That's all they care about. You know who never ever talked about how much air they had left? Those guys. Those guys apparently had unlimited oxygen at all times. No one ever talked about it. It's like, how, where, you guys you were running around, you're putting together cars, you're playing golf. No one ever talked about how much air they left. There isn't a single audio clip about how much air they had left. Drives me nuts. Last but not least, the spacesuits themselves, and you can look this up. This is not secret information. The early spacesuits were huge, bulky, plasticky Doctor Who things where they're just metal and plastic, and they realized they're like, this is not going to work. The capsule we'd have to build for this thing would be huge. So somebody brilliant, whoever came up with it, said, let's just use soft suits. Wait a minute. We can't use soft suits. It's like thermodynamics. It's like soft suits would just turn into a parade float. They go, and they just tip over and it explode and they die. It's like, but nobody knows anything about that. We don't know. Seriously, people do not know anything about physics in this country at all. It's like, we'll just use a soft suit. It'll be fine. And it worked.
Yeah.
And to where, last but not least, let me make this quote, which is, when I'm in the States, I get it. It's like, why do you believe this shot? Well, it's because, we're Americans. Wave the flag. We're the greatest, blah, blah, blah. But I ask people outside of this country, I ask them the same thing. It's like, why do you think the Americans went to the moon? Right? Why do you believe that? They all say the exact same thing. They said, well, because it was on television.
Yeah.
And I said, because the Americans would never, ever lie about anything on TV. And they certainly wouldn't lie about that, because that doesn't put them in the greatest, puts them on this huge pedestal. Look what the Americans did. And to this day, I remember I was in Dublin. I was in Dublin, and I was asking this girl who's, she was heavy science girl. And she was, and I go, doesn't it bother you? I go, look, no one's been back. No one's been there since 1972. I go, when are we going back? Right? And she looks at me with these glazed eyes, and she goes, soon. We're going back soon. I'm going, yeah, I've heard that a few times. For 40 years, I've heard that. Anyway.
It's it's a very good point. We have all this technology that you think we could do it, a lot easier than we could all those years ago, and it's like, why haven't we really?
Well, that don't forget there was a space race happening there, right? The Russians were kicking our ass, and then all of a sudden it's like, the Americans went to the moon, and then the Russians quit.
Yeah.
It's like I've never seen that in the history of sports. It's like the first guy crosses the finish line, the other people are like, well, might as well go home. Back it up. And it drove me insane because it's like, that's not how it works, right? Everything else, it follows a certain continuity, which is we put 4 people on the moon, they put 5. We put a small base, we put a bigger base. And then the next thing, Time Magazine runs a story that says, has the Cold War reached the moon? That's how it would have gone. But the reason they didn't do it again, this goes on to Hollywood production values, is continuity. Remember MovieMistakes.com. If you have two studios in Los Angeles trying to shoot the exact same movie, there's going to be continuity issues. One studio is not going to shoot it the exact same way, and someone's going to figure that out. Well, imagine if you had a studio, like an Air Force studio, it's going to shoot it, and then a studio in Moscow that's going to shoot the same thing, right? Yeah. How is that going to work? Because it's not going to take long. Somebody's going to say, the ash looks different, right? Yeah. Or it's like, why does the lighting look different? The sun should be over there. Why does the sun look different? Oh my God. They figured it out really, really quick. And they said, yeah, so we're going to take over from here. And you guys just fade back into nothing because they couldn't do a simultaneous program, and I don't blame them one bit. That was one of the good proactive moves that they did, which was don't let there could not be two simultaneous programs along those lines. So the Americans did it, the Americans quit, and then nobody even tried after us. Yeah. Come on. I mean, you guys, I will give credit to Britain where credit is due, where Britain, I think, just stayed out of it. They're like, isn't that you guys all over the place? It's like, we're a little above this. We're not, we're up here. We're highbrow. You guys can do all that. To where, look up the scene. There's a wonderful scene from the Sean Connery James Bond film. I think it's Diamonds Are Forever, where Sean Connery was over in the States and he was running through a Hollywood area and he ran through a moon set, right? Where they were faking some moon footage, right? For something, right? But it was, for whatever reason, and the astronauts couldn't catch them because they were still in character. So they were running in slow motion and they couldn't catch him, right? Because they were still in character. I think that was a little wink to what it's like the British is like, we're not faking crap. It's because it always bugged me. It's like, why don't you guys have a space program? And it's like nope, not gonna happen. No,
stay out of it.
We're not. This isn't us. The Americans. You guys. That's you guys. We're not going for that.
I suppose sort of slightly away from the flat Earth thing. I suppose there's always this kind of preconception that a conspiracy theorist who believes one sort of conspiracy theory, there's always this conception that they'll believe anything then. I suppose are there any other big, I guess, mainstream conspiracy theories that you buy into? So obviously the moon landing,
you bet. That's an interesting question you have there, because it works in reverse now. Before Flat Earth, I had an opinion because I never got married, had kids, so I had an opinion on just about every conspiracy you could think of. Some I liked, some I didn't. Right? But when you get into Flat Earth, because it's such a giant umbrella that covers everything, it's like, if you could fake that, then everything has to be looked at again. Everybody that's in the community, everybody that believes in flat, not everybody that believes in conspiracies believes in Flat Earth, obviously, because Flat Earth is so huge. But if you believe in Flat Earth, you are open to every other conspiracy. You may not like it. So do I believe that JFK was more than advertised? Yeah, of course I do. Do I believe, though, that Elvis had Bigfoot's baby? No. No, I don't. But at the same time, if someone came up to me with new evidence, it's like, look, man, I got photos of Elvis, I got photos of Bigfoot, you got to see these. I will actually be like, you know what, I'll give you some time. Beforehand, I would just sort of shot him down. But I have talked to people. Again, it was the opening line, opening paragraph of the clues, where I knew people that were convinced that the royals are made up of lizard people. Right?
Yeah.
But those same people, the same people that claim that, I go, but what about Flat Earth? And they're like, get the hell out of here. I'm going, what? Yeah. What about the lizards? What about them? So yes, I do believe in a whole realm of conspiracies, but I'm a little different. So
Yeah.
I don't, for me, what qualifies as a conspiracy is if I can't improve on it, the conspiracy in any way, then I think it's probably legit. Meaning I'm a big believer in the greater good. Most people think that conspiracies are, it's all sinister people with black hats, twirling handlebar mustaches, and they're, it's all that. It's not. Most of the time, they're making decisions that are way bigger in scope. That they're doing it for the greater good, but there's going to be people that suffer because of it. And so when I look at things like, I don't know, Pearl Harbor, great example. Did we let Pearl Harbor happen over here? Did we do we open it up for the Japanese to attack? Well, the bigger picture there is if the United States, we knew the Germans' plan. Most people don't know there was tons and tons of German citizens already over here in the States. And they wanted to take America without firing a shot. I mean, they were going to fly dual flags, and we were going to be the big thing. It was going to be, what Britain tried to do years ago. Yeah. And so how do you stop that? How do you get to motivate the people? Nobody wanted to go over to Europe. And so, one of the oldest tricks in the book is to hit somebody in the back of the head. And when they spin around, you point at the guy next to you. It's one of the oldest tricks in the book, and it works all the time. You could do that on large scale. And so in this case, we used it to enter World War II. Do I think the ends justify the means? Sure. Why not? If not, we're all speaking German, right? It wasn't even a question. So, but it's a big thing. It's usually too big for people. But I'll give you like a smaller conspiracy just for the hell of it. The Loch Ness Monster in your neck of the woods, right? Obviously not real, right? But then you look at something called the in fact I might even have a slide of it for you. Look at something called the coelacanth fish. Here's a great one. So the did I drop that in there? Yeah, I did. Hang on, I did. So the coelacanth fish, right? Extinct for at least 70 million years, right? It's an ugly fish with a bunch of extra fins, and here's a fossil record of it, and everyone thought, every scientist in the world would have bet the frickin' farm this thing was dead. Well, until the British Navy caught one in a net off of Madagascar or South Africa in 1938, and that's a coelacanth fish, and they were very proud of that. And it's British people there. So, and then they caught another one off of Madagascar and then Mozambique, and then they realized it's like, holy crap, they're like all over Africa, and it took years. And then eventually, you got National Geographic swimming around with them. So the question is, how did everyone get that one so wrong? Right? It's like, and to where scientists had to backpedal. Can you imagine, right? It's like, oh no, they're living fossils, and they're in an evolutionary state of stasis. It's like, you screwed up, didn't you? You absolutely botched this one. So go back to the original thing. So is it possible there are prehistoric lizards or things living in Loch Ness? And you say no. It's like, why not? Well, because they've been extinct for at least 100 million years. I go, oh, you mean like this fish right here? Like this fish that you got absolutely wrong. You're absolutely convinced that it couldn't happen twice, right? Even though there's lots of people up there that swear, and by the way, it's not just it's Scotland, right? Not Loch Ness. Yeah. It's not just Scotland. It's there's freshwater lakes in cold weather climates all over the place that have these things. It's what a friend of mine called cryptozoology, which is it's a real term, which is people forget that it's one of the bad things about science, which is until science has one lying dead in front of them or alive, it's not real. The giant panda was a myth. The giant anaconda was a myth. The giant squid, even though we've still never caught one, is a myth. I think there's species out there even now, and I always think of British people when I think of it. Like there's something there was something I read about years ago. I call it the Goliath cobra, a cobra which has basically got the head the size of a freaking horse, right? Well, you can imagine, right? Somebody in a pith helmet walking around the jungle that runs into this thing. It's like, gets out his notebook. It's like, oh, it's a fascinating specimen. And it's like, why is it coming at me? And then it never gets discovered because, the guy gets taken out. I think there's plenty of species out there that still aren't discovered because, well, you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. So multiply that by, I mean, if you have other conspiracies, throw them at me. Am I suspicious about 9/11? Sure. I bring up Building 7. Am I suspicious about Roswell? No, I absolutely think it happens. Watch the TV movie with Charlie Sheen. It is brilliant. It's absolutely what we would have done because it was right after World War II, and that's something that the communication levels weren't that great. So when a military base guy, again, let me use Roswell just for example. I love this one, which is you have a farmer that finds all this debris on his field, right? And he's like, damn Air Force pieces of crap. So he drives in to the Air Force base. It's like, get this stuff off my land, right? And the Air Force guy is going, are we testing something over there? It's like, I don't know. Send somebody over there, right? And they're looking. They're going, what the hell is this crap, right? And then the next thing you know, they put 2 and 2 together. It's like, oh my God, it's flying saucers. And they tell the press immediately. They call up all the news stations. They're like, we got ourselves a flying saucer. Yep, we're going to be heroes. And then it takes 2 days before the Pentagon all of a sudden picks up a paper. They're going, oh no. So, and then the Pentagon has to have them go back and retract everything, and they throw out one of their guys under the bus. And it's like, yeah. You're going to be the idiot in this one. And so, but the point is that everything up until that point was perfect plot line writing. That's what we would do. Ignorance the entire way. The farmer that didn't know what he had, the Air Force guys that didn't know what, and then they go to the farmer. It's like, so you're not going to say this about are you? It's like, well, I don't know. What's in it for me? It's like, what do you want? And I think he got out of it with, he got to start a new business, like freezing meat and some brand new trucks and some crap like that. Yeah, and he never talked about it again. Of course, people can be bought. So, but are there other conspiracies out there that I believe in? Yeah, sure. Again, it still comes down to, if you ever look at a conspiracy, look at not just what happened, but who would benefit from it. Yeah. If you might ask eventually why hide flat Earth? Right? Why hide it? That's a big one. It's like, who would benefit? It's like, are you kidding? Yeah. It's not what you stand to gain. It's what you stand to lose. So by 1960, civilization was already built, right? Everything, the cement had hardened. We had everything in place. And you're talking about upsetting that balance for what? Yeah. What exactly are you going to do? I mean, academically, every university in every country would have to be retooled. Libraries would have to be emptied oh my God, astrophysics and astronomy would be gutted. The remaining ologies, whatever ology you can think of, would have to be rewritten. Economics, you'd have to suspend world markets for months because you don't know what it means. And then the 5 religious houses of the world, Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, you're giving them leverage against science simultaneously. That's the shortest Illuminati meeting ever. It's like, what could go wrong? And then someone like me rattles this stuff off, and the guy at the end of the table who's always smoking, he's going, so yeah, we're gonna keep a lid on this for now. we're gonna put a pin in this until I say otherwise, and that was it. And then you try to keep this thing a secret. It's pure. You don't release it. You don't let it out into the public until you have a way to control the narrative, which is why I think, by the way, you and I are talking, and we've been doing this the last 7 years, which is, think of what's in place now. You've got high-speed internet, social media, 6 billion smartphones. I mean, more people have smartphones than have running water. You can push out a narrative to pretty much everybody in a matter of minutes. And it's the same narrative, and you can keep that going. I mean, look at what's happened over the last 2-3 years. Narratives have been spun. Now there's been some resistance, but with something like this, and everything can be measured in real time. The brilliance of social media is, all the servers, and by the way, the entire internet, everything's based on a military backbone system. It's not like the internet was just created out of nowhere. It's the military bulletin board system that was just laced with all the, we put all the civilian stuff in it. So when people say, oh no, they're not monitoring stuff on the internet, it's like, what?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, if it was my internet, I'd monitor everything, every single thing. Yeah. I would develop server farms and audio recognition technology, and I would record everything and flag everything.
I think of the movie The Big Short, and I think
Oh
with
yeah.
Brad Pitt's character in it, and I can't remember the exact quote, but I know that he plays someone who in real life was always suspicious about monitoring, and he's got about three phones,
Yeah,
and
yeah, he's
one
got
of the
the phones stacked on top of each other.
yeah,
Yeah.
and he's and one of the guys is sort of like, oh, come on and not listening in, and Brad Pitt just says one quote which is like, oh, the CIA can monitor such and such, you don't think they're going to use it, and it's like, yeah, it's a fair point. If they've got the technology, why wouldn't
Why
they?
wouldn't you? Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
it's again, you don't tell people you're going to. I'll give you a great example. It's like, look, there's a quote from one of our presidents, FDR, from back in World War II. He goes, only tell the people as much truth as they can handle, and
Yeah,
nothing more. You don't tell why would you tell them
yeah,
that and don't remind them, by the way, that the internet is a military system. Don't remind them that the GPS system is a military system. There's so many little things. A great one was our spy planes, like the U-2 spy plane. We didn't have a U-2 spy plane. We didn't have spy planes, right? And then one was shot down over the Soviet Union. And it's like,
yeah,
okay, so we got a spy plane. And it's like, okay, until you get caught, it's lawyers' rules. Lawyers' rules apply to the military, which is deny, 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 until they absolutely have you. And then maybe you tell the truth. You always lie. Every lawyer will tell, every defense attorney, it's like, yeah, they get paid to lie, right? So
yeah.
when the SR-7, you know what the SR-71 is, the Blackbird spy plane?
Oh, yeah,
Okay, so the
yeah,
big Blackbird spy plane, we did a cute little thing where when it was retired, we announced it. Right, so out in Nevada somewhere, we had a press conference. Like, oh yeah, by the way, we're retiring our Blackbird SR-71. It's like, the what now? It's like, oh yeah, this thing's been flying around, and we're retiring it. It's basically them showing off, to the other
yeah,
countries. It's like, by the way, we had this spy plane, and we're not even using it anymore, right? Which is not true. We still do use it for some things. And I remember this one reporter. And I think he was a one-star Air Force general up on stage, and the reporter's like, "What are you replacing it with?" He goes, "Oh, nothing." Any questions? And it's like, and of course they are, right? And the nerds know what it is. It's called the Aurora, and it's so fast that by the time you hear it, it's gone. Right, all you see is the smoke trail from it. Apparently, it flies at such a high RPM and such a low RPM, but the thrust is so violent that it's called donuts on a rope, where it's like a thin trail followed by a donut, and that's just the burst. And it's just wild. Again, they'll retire that eventually and be like, oh yeah, this was another thing we had.
we had this.
There are some secrets you can keep. The Groom Lake facility, Area 51, great one. Where as our camera technology got better, there were nerds that would go up on mountaintops and zoom in. It's like, yeah, look, there it is, the base, and the base got bigger and bigger, and the government figured out, it's like, just buy all the real estate around the base. All of it. Just buy every mountaintop that can see the base. Buy that mountaintop, and then that's it. And then the rest of it will, they still can't hide the planes that fly in from Vegas, and they're pure white, no marking, windows blacked out planes, right?
Yeah.
And they fly out every day. And nobody can run stories on it. You think the news would be like, oh, look, it's, the planes that are going to the base that supposedly doesn't exist, but does.
Yeah.
That we see in movies, but isn't really there. Anyway.
I mean, I suppose very topical at the minute. Obviously, the UK is just going through a almost unprecedented kind of heat wave.
40 Celsius.
I mean, yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, climate change. How does that fit into?
Oh, I believe in it. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of people in the conspiracy world that do not believe in it. I absolutely believe in it. And I've said this. I've never wavered from this, and that is, if you're in a dome, if you're in a structure, then whatever's heat. Come on, look at the just logistics of this. You've got a billion internal combustion engines running all the time. 24 hours a day, there are at least a billion internal combustion engines running. at any given point in the world. Is that right? Well, let's just round it up to 1 billion, right? You know, it's trucks, it's cars, whatever. But there's a lot, at least hundreds of millions. We'll push it to 1 billion. A car engine, most people don't understand because, you know, we control, you know, the heating and cooling from inside it. It's just a little furnace. That's all it is. You could put that car engine in a house and heat a house up extremely well, right? And because that's all they really are. Well, you put hundreds of millions of those things running at any given time in an enclosed system. What do you think's going to happen? I mean, I give the example. It's like, take a propane lantern and bring it into your SUV while the air conditioning's running, right? Right? You're going to create some, and then bring another one in, and then another one in. Eventually, you're going to develop what's, you know, weird hot and cold spots, right? Which is why, you know, it was renamed from global warming to climate change. But overall, you put enough of these things in there, oh yeah, it's going to turn into a warming situation where the air conditioning system is going to lose. Do I think that, you know, there's an automated system that's controlling some of the climate in this world? Sure. You know, between the jet stream and the underwater conveyor system and the other stuff. Sure, it's trying to compensate. But we're running into issues now where, again, wild weather that shouldn't be there, you know, in certain places. And it's becoming way more irregular and way more extreme. And despite the snow here and ice here, no, the glaciers are still melting. And the temperatures are going up in certain places. The fact that you're running into 40 degrees Celsius where you are is staggering. You know, London is not known for. I mean, there's a reason why you guys go to the Mediterranean on a vacation. You know, you don't. Everyone knows a lot of umbrellas are sold in London. So do I believe in? And it also made sense to me. It's like, look, doesn't the term greenhouse gas mean more if it's an actual greenhouse? It was one of my biggest arguments always, which is no scientist has ever come back with it, which is what happens at the edge of space? Exactly. I go, what happens that, you know, you've got gas, and then you've got nothing, right? And again, most people don't know physics. It's like, look, a vacuum is a vacuum. Vacuum is irresistible. There's nothing that can defeat a vacuum, including gravity. A great example would be if you had a second story of your house and you turned it into a vacuum chamber right above you, right? And you pull the lever on it. What's going to happen? It's not like the movies. It's not this, you know, we only got 2 minutes of air left. Get the duct tape. No. It's violent. It's extremely. Look at there's some wonderful videos on underwater pressure accidents. Just look those up if you get a chance.
Where, like saturation divers.
Oh yeah, submarines, deep sea oil rigs. It's horrible. I mean, and it's very very fast in a fraction of a second. It's not like the movies where you know it's like no. If a meteor goes through the craft, that's it. You know, you're done. The air's out of your lungs. It's awful. It's horribly. I mean, you don't even have a chance to react. So what happens then? So my point is, if the air goes upstairs instantly into that vacuum chamber, when you go outside, why is the air still here? Exactly. And people will say, again, the only reaction you have is gravity, right? It's all anyone ever says is gravity. Go, you mean the same gravity that couldn't keep the air in your room? So I go, so what, is there more gravity out there? And then people say, well, no, the atmosphere weighs more. I even had a woman, and she was a physicist. She said, well, no, it's like, you know, it's just little trace particles at the edge of space, and it doesn't pull that hard. I'm going, that's not how it works. I go, it's no different than holding a cardboard box full of packing popcorn, right? You pick the box up, everything's fine. Okay, put the box back down. Put a whole bunch of heavy books on it. Now pick that box up. Those books are going to punch right through it's like, what's your point? I go, vacuum is not going to care about the little trace particles that are at the edge of space. It's going after the whole planet. It's going after everything. It's going after the clouds. It's going after the upper atmosphere. It's going after the water. It's going after everything. And nothing's gonna stop it. And yet nobody will tell me. You know, they just try and they try, but again, Americans don't know physics, so whatever.
So I mean, so you believe in in obviously in climate change. So the, I guess, overseers, for want of a better word, whatever you call
the authority,
people in charge, the authority, I mean, would you say then that they're just kind of letting it happen? If we're in this snow globe and this is kind of like an experiment,
Yeah.
Is that why they're kind of just letting climate change happen and they're just sort of seeing?
Yeah, there for the authority or the world order or whatever you want, there are certain things you can control about a population, but there's certain things you can't, and you really don't want to. Meaning, industry is industry, right? And if you're going to build a civilization, the engine, I mean, come on, it's the greatest invention of all time. It's not the computers, it's not the wheel, it is the internal combustion engine. That's when everything changed. The side effect of it is brutal, but eventually you're going to get to the point where you may have to deal with what's known, and you may have heard it called the Great Reset, which is sooner or later, and the bigger problem isn't because of the internal combustion engine. And because it's based off of fossil fuels, and one of the side effects of developing fossil fuels is fuel-based fertilizer, which means you can create massive more amounts of food, which means the population rate, it's not even the population number. That's not the part that worried them. Again, I'm speaking as a world order person, right? I don't go to all the meetings, but every once in a while. So imagine this. Could you put 20 billion people on this planet? We were pushing 8 before the whole virus thing. Could you put 20 billion people on this planet? Yeah, of course you could. There is huge tracts of land everywhere, especially over in the States. It's like, yeah, you got some crowded cities here and there, but you drive 100 miles off that way. There's so much land with nobody on it at all that it's just a question of food, and it's a question of birth rate. And I'm not trying to be weird when I say that. It's not just the population, it's how fast the population is moving upward. The graph is tracking so high that the world order has decided it's like it's going to go vertical, so we've got to stop it as fast as we can. Where was I? What was the initial question on that? Whoever's
in charge would, sort of allow climate
Oh,
change.
Yeah. So you allow the climate change thing to happen because it doesn't matter anyway. You've got bigger fish to fry. So eventually the climate thing, climate change, that's an issue. Of course it is. No question. The water thing seems to be compensating. Even though the glaciers are melting and big chunks are breaking off of Antarctica, Florida isn't flooded yet. Right, and there's big lowlands out there. Yeah, there's some small islands, no question. We're not talking about it that much. Where the islands that are literally sitting 6 feet above sea level, those are going under, and we've seen those. But that's not much in the grand scheme of things. Their bigger issue is population, and by that I mean the population rate. And so they're just gonna let that happen. All right. Again, I'm not gonna try to be too dark when I say this, even though Greta would probably be upset if I said this. So imagine if you want to slow down climate change, you have one of two options, right? One is you convince all the industrial companies in the world to, under all those different jurisdictions simultaneously to make less money to constrict their industry for the greater good.
Yeah.
Never, ever going to happen. Never, ever. And they know this. So you don't even ask. It's like, in fact, that would be one of those things where everybody at the Illuminati table would like, there'd be this pause and people like, and then they laugh for like 5 minutes. And after they wipe their tears, it'd be like, okay, seriously, what are we going to do? And the other thing, it's like, well, lower the population, because that would definitely help a great deal, because that's still what's stemming the other side of things. So various things we probably won't talk about here. You do that, and during that, yes, you could kill two birds with one stone, for lack of a better term. But there's sorry. Very short answer. They're allowing it to happen because they don't care.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you mentioned, obviously the pandemic. I suppose,
Right.
Do you believe, because obviously it wasn't long after it sort of, began spreading and obviously becoming as big as it did. And obviously, many people sort of believe that it was
engineered.
Yeah.
I've never seen a crisis uniformly. whatever. It was that is that a word? The where it was accepted by all nations with such welcome arms and using the same verbiage. Everyone was on the same page. Remember the narrative, right? Everyone was on the same page. It's like, yes, this is obviously a problem. Here's the only way to take care of it. Everyone must do this. Like, okay, and it's done in record time. And again, I'm a big believer in writing, and it's like, wow, you guys, the time frame that everything was happening, the beats were so fast to where there were a lot of people, even non-conspiracy people, that were like, so does anyone else think this is suspicious in the slightest? Yeah. And so but they kept people guessing. But yeah, I mean, we've lost people in our community, and I've lost family members, and for various reasons, though. It was a two-stroke thing, meaning there were people that died from certain things. There were people that died what looked to be like from the direct treatment, and there were people that died from possibly the shot in the arm. And the combination of those things, it seemed like an overarching theme. Did I think it was the end game? No. I never thought it was the end game. I thought it was more of a softening of the target. The thing that I've been focusing on my channel for the last 6 months at least. Well, about 6 months. If it's been that long, has been eventually you're going to have to distract everybody from that with a military conflict, a big one, a really, really big one. Yeah. And come on, they've been painting. This one has been a long time in the making, which is, who's the bad guys? Well, obviously it's going to be these guys over here with the red flag. Oh, here's another red flag over there. And, and then Europe in the middle, and then America trying to guide things but it's been a chaotic mess. We'll see, how, that's a whole nother set of conspiracies where Russia has not been going for the initial bait. Come on, they know war about as well as anyone. These guys have been doing this a long time. So, and by the way, you want to look up some fun stuff. Look up how quickly after those Russian ships were blown up that fireworks depot next to your Air Force base blew up like it did. And they just kind of downplayed that, and then immediately came afterwards and said, oh yeah, by the way, when Boris said, we're also training Ukrainians up here. It's like, wait, you're flying Ukrainians to the UK to train them, and you don't think the Russians are gonna figure that out? Seriously, it's like can you imagine, right, in a base in Moscow, it's like, Ukrainian cell phone outside London, right? And it's like, fire missile, and that's it. And because, again, you can't report it. You can't say, there's no way you could say, oh yeah, by the way, a Russian missile blew up a little training compound outside of an RAF base. Because if you did, you'd have to explain, which is why right afterwards you'd have to say, well, why are they blowing up, and Ukrainians died, right? It's like, why would Ukrainians even be here? Which is why it was a one-off where Boris had to say, oh yeah, we're training people here. Basically past tense. We were training people here, but they were dumb enough to use their frickin' cell phones. Whatever. Anyway, sorry, I'm all over the map.
Kind of going back, I suppose, obviously, if you believe, that obviously COVID was manufactured or whatever,
sure.
Would it be fair to say, of course, the vaccines are probably, even more, of the sort of target?
Yeah. I won't go into it too much in detail, but I have way too many instances of again, immediate family members who had to deal with the ones that survived anyway, had to deal with all sorts of issues. And again, it goes into, I'm not trying to be dark when I say this, it goes into a narrative. If I was going to do this, right, if someone came to me in an Illuminati meeting, said, it's like, all right, what do you got? What do you got for some ideas? It's like, well, stage 1, I would do this, and stage 2, I would do this. Now, stage 1 and 2, they're not the end all be all, but they're certainly going to help your cause. And then eventually you're going to have all of Europe launch a thing against Russia. Eventually, and by the way, that's going to happen because Russia was very smart in that they didn't take the bait. By the way, have you ever seen that when Russian ships get blown up? By the way, by SAS.
Yeah.
SAS did all of that. That's why Russia's. Did you see the graphic they ran on that television show where they wiped out the whole UK?
Yeah, that was the strangest. Yeah,
and then they
took
took it out. It's like, oh yeah, not only that, but we have a tidal wave weapon that can hit you from the west, and we'll just wipe you out that way. It's like, what? And you're thinking, why are you picking on UK? It's like because SAS has been doing so much damage down there, and Russia knows this. They're like, SAS, put them at top of list. They want them. But anyway, so yes, the everything about the pandemic has been pretty much what I would expect. It's been.
So I take it you're not vaccinated.
Oh my God, no. No. I am not for various reasons. But no, there's no way. I would even if I wasn't a conspiracy guy, I'd be one of those people that would be that would say, let's wait and see. And because I've watched so many people around me deal with stuff, I mean, good Lord, the examples I could give you. The thing is, what was amazing to me was how many different aspects the shot got hit you with. There was so many. So I mean, come on, my uncle's right now is on more blood thinner than I think actual blood. My aunt the same. I mean, there was an ex-girlfriend I remember. She called me months ago. We were gonna have coffee, right? And she goes, "Oh no, I can't." I go, "Why not?" She goes, "Well, I can't go out in public right now." I go, "Why not?" She goes, "Well, I have jaundice." And I go, "Well, what the hell?" And she goes, "Yeah." She goes, "My liver's failing." And I'm going, "What?" I go, and then of course it occurred to me. I go, "Did you get the shot recently?" She goes, "Yeah, about 3 weeks ago." Why? And I'm going, "Oh God." And I mean, those were fairly light. I mean, there was others that have not been fun. So no, nobody in our community, nobody has volunteered. I mean, I'm not kidding you. It has been the hard line has been drawn there. And so the only ones, but the flip side of that is if you, there's only one protocol. In fact, we've been telling people, it's like, look, unless you have like just a broken arm or a leg, don't go to the hospital for anything. Because the protocol is you go in and if you have a respiratory issue, I'm not kidding you, there's only one protocol, and that is, oh yeah, we'll put you in a coma and we'll throw some remdesivir at you. And that's a terrible idea. I mean, it's putting anyone in a coma, especially if you walk in the door with a respiratory issue. The leading side effects of medically induced coma is pneumonia, and it's just horrible, awful. So we have lost multiple people that way in our community, and it's mostly because of denial. Which is, it's so weird watching. It's been almost a psychological seminar watching all this where. Like something will happen, like one guy will, medical coma, he's dead, right? And we know all the details, and it's like, look, do the poster, don't let this happen to you, right? And then it happens to another guy, right? And it's like, wait, I know for a fact you knew this guy, right? Why did you go in? And the reason is because everyone, denial. It's like, well, it probably won't happen to me. Right, it's like, I know what happened to those people, and it happened to these people, and all these other people. I've been watching videos on it for 3 months, but I have this cough, and I'll be fine, right? And you get there, and I hear the same stories all the time. The doctor's like, "Yeah, we want to put you in a coma," and people. I mean, there's some people that run, which is good. It's like, sorry, fine, they leave. And I've yet to run into somebody that died of a respiratory issue at their house. But the others, they just keep hammering at them all the time, which is, they say. So anyway, does that kind of clear up the stance?
Yeah.
But everybody in our community, everyone is, if they're gonna go down, they're not gonna go down because of the shot. No offense to whatever you're doing, I don't even want to know. So
I mean, sort of speaking of the community, I mean, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, it's interesting that, yeah, just, 10 years ago, this was, it was not something that, I'm not saying it didn't exist, but it wasn't really something that was mentioned at all. But I
right.
mean, or much. But I mean, how do you see, the flat Earth movement community sort of progressing in another 10 years? Do you think you're going to be sort of even more widespread? Do you think within the next 10 years, there'll be something that kind of convinces the more wider world? I mean, where do you see the flat Earth movement in about a decade?
Well, okay, it's an interesting question because if things progressed without the reset moving forward, oh yeah, we'd be everywhere. There was a
Yeah.
reason why they stunted us as when they did. From 2015 through 2018, 2015, all of 2016, 2017, and then going into 2018, we were running unopposed. We were promoted on YouTube just shamelessly, and
Yeah.
we were everywhere. I mean, to the point where I did in 2019, I did conferences in 7 countries. It was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, we were all over the place. I mean, I did a commercial in Australia. Yeah, it's like for a phone television commercial for a phone app down there. Because the owners were flat earthers. It was so weird because the campaign was called Foolproof. Get it? It's like, well, if Mark can can learn our app, anyone can. It was a gambling app because gambling's completely legal in the entire country of Australia,
Yeah.
and it's also a big gambling problem in Australia, as you can imagine. So, but the point is that when I was down there, I was the only non-actor in the campaign, right? I was walking around, I was looking at the call sheet, and I'm going, I was the only one without an agent, and I was going,
Yeah.
why am I here exactly? I go, you could have somebody pretend to be me, right? For pennies on the dollar. And they said, no, the owners wanted to meet you. I was like, oh, okay. So if everything was, if you just go back to 2019 and you ask me that question, I'd be like, oh yeah, we're unstoppable. 90% of our community's in the closet. We've got celebs all over the place that just won't come out until more celebs come out. We were doing just wonderfully. I mean, because the topic wasn't offensive enough to people to where they wanted it stopped. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's all sorts of topics that are controversial, but this one was no one could figure out, is it dangerous? Is it, what could it do?
Yeah.
However, now that we are where we are right now in 2022, I don't even look forward 10 years because the speed of how things are progressing, even though I think some of the stuff in Europe is happening in slow motion, you wait till this winter. When Russia strangleholds most of Eastern Europe with energy stuff, it's going to change.
Yeah.
It'll be a game changer. And I do firmly believe, look, I love flat earth. And I think, if the world was back in 2019, I think there's nothing we couldn't do. I mean, I've got magazine covers over there from 2019.
Yeah.
It's like we couldn't do anything wrong. But for whatever reason, they're playing for keeps now. They want this to happen. How it's going to exactly shake out, I'm not sure. I do know that the core of Europe, not you guys, because you're out on an island, but the core of Europe is going to change forever here pretty soon because they're going to force everybody's hand. I mean, Germany can't freeze during the winter. Their industries aren't going to shut down. France isn't going to accept it. All these countries aren't going to accept it. And Russia is reluctantly being drug into this. And what China's role is going to play, I don't know. But between the three of them, let's put it this way. And again, I don't want to be too pessimistic, but between those three, the big three, U.S. and China and Russia, they can make a terrible mess of things before it's over. You just feel lucky that you are where you are, because Britain, seriously, you guys are in a spot where, there's a reason why Germany never did a land invasion on you guys in World War II, and it's because geographically you are where you are. The rest of Europe, oh no. Everybody.
Yeah, no, I mean, much as I have not slightly pessimistic views about my country and the way it's governed, I'm thankful that I'm not in.
Yeah, there are
there are
way worse places to be than. In fact, if I had to choose between being in England and like being in Canada, I'd still be in England because Canada's way too close to the U.S. I mean, Canada, I lived in Canada for a year, and the only other country is, again, part of the Crown, New Zealand. New Zealand is a wonderful place, absolutely beautiful place. If the U.S. cracked in half, New Zealand is where I'd want to go. However, the New Zealand could, I think, be taken over by like 5 ships and 1,000 men. There's nothing there. It's a pretty place, but it's like not exactly, unless you got the elves to help or part of the Shire. I'm not sure.
You just want to live like in one of the nice little valleys, pretend you're for a holiday.
I went. By the way, I went to that. I went to the. That is their biggest. New Zealand is so weird. That is their biggest tourist attraction is the frickin' Shire, which is in the middle of this middle of this sheep farm, and they built it back. They tore it down after the first 3 movies because there were people that kept showing up to shoot their own little impromptu movies. And then after the Hobbit trilogy, they built it back up and turned it into a permanent thing. To where now there are tour buses. There's a tour group that goes through literally every 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes, from internationally, from all over the places, just groups that go through the frickin' Shire and end at the tavern, and you get a drink and take all your pictures. Wow, it's wild, but that's the biggest tourist attraction in the country.
When it all goes wrong everywhere, that's the place to
yeah.
Go.
There's some great things, but again, don't feel bad about Britain. Britain is still they're survivors more than most. Yeah. So,
but I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, that you mentioned Russia and energy and all that, because I mean, one of the big things that's kind of led to even more civil unrest here is how much energy prices have skyrocketed.
Oh, good Lord!
And in October, they're meant to go even further, and it's like it's sort of like you sort of wonder this winter.
Yeah,
what's going to happen on the national and the international
there will be civil unrest, no question. The poor neighborhoods will get hit first, and what I try to remind people, I go, don't forget there are poor countries in the world. It's a global. In the world community, the poor country. Africa's. I don't even know what the hell to do with Africa. They're screwed. Yeah. But there's all sorts of countries out there that won't do as well. The NATO countries will fare better, but again, we'll have to see how it shakes out and how everybody makes their moves. Don't forget the whole Taiwan thing hasn't even happened yet. That's just
that's true.
That's waiting in the wings. Yeah. And that's not gonna play out well. Even though it doesn't make sense, but it's like, it's American expansion that we paint in a different light, right? It's like we have no stake in frickin' Taiwan. We never did, right? It's China's land, right? It's always been their land. It's like, but we set up some manufacturing there, and now it's like, oh no, we should defend those poor Taiwanese people. It's like, no, we don't care. That's why the Ukrainian thing probably playing better over where you are. Over here, we don't care. We just don't. Americans are so self-centered that way that there's an old saying which is like, whatever's happening, is it going to change the price of beer? Then who the hell cares? We don't. And by the way, will it change the price of our really horrible beer? No. It won't.
In the UK, when Russia first, invaded Ukraine. It's massive. Even just, I live in a fairly small town, out in the country, and the amount of houses you pass that have got the blue and yellow flags, and it's sort of totally different, I imagine, from where you are.
Yeah. And by the way, I knew you guys were going to be in trouble because I knew you guys were going to be in trouble. Of the strong stance you took with Ukraine, the fact that UK seemed to care more than others. It's like, oh, we're going to commit to everything. It's like, why in the hell would you care?
Yeah.
Why would you make such a stink? UK, what stake do they have in Ukraine? And then of course you look at the backstory, and it's like, no, that was our big. It was us basically daring Russia people forget that after the Soviet Union broke up 20 years ago, we grabbed every country, everybody became free agents, right? So we grabbed every country we could, except for the ones that bordered Russia. And they were like, should we try to go for one of those? Yeah, it won't be easy. Okay, who do we go for? Ukraine. Okay, let's do that. So we worked on them. We almost had them. And Russia's like, yeah, that's not happening. And they just came in and hammered on it. And now, again, don't forget about, and this is way closer to you, don't forget about Finland. Because when that happens, remember, they share an 800-mile border, right? When that happens... People forget you pull up a map and you look at Helsinki and you back up just a couple clicks, St. Petersburg is right there. Right? And I've got a military friend who said, he goes, you wait. He goes, if that actually happens, he goes, the ships in St. Petersburg, the military ships won't even leave port. It's that close. They'll just fire from they'll be docked and they'll fire. And Finland, other than Helsinki, there's not really much there, right? I mean, you could drive there from St. Petersburg in I think like 3 hours. It's that close. Yeah. So, yeah, there's all sorts of fun scenarios that are going to play out. Yeah. So, but for you, again, just be grateful that Britain is its own.
Could be a lot worse.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you're not Spain. You're not France. You're not anyone. You're definitely not Germany or Poland or Czech. There's all sorts of places you don't want to be. You guys are in pretty good shape. Not that, again, no offense. Not that Russia's forgotten about you, obviously, but because and I'm dying to find out. It's just like, really, do you really have a tidal wave weapon? Do you really think you're going to be able to do that? Because that would be horrible.
I got a few more questions. Just before we go on, I think your video. I don't know if your video's working. I'm just getting there.
Really?
I think it was. It might have been when you put something in the chat. I don't know if that disrupted it.
How about now?
I'm just getting the. I'm just getting the. Don't know. I mean, it's not the end of the world if not. I've still got your voice.
As long as the audio's working, because I see the video on my side.
Yeah. But yeah. Anyway. All
right.
So just a couple more points. So I mean, because I assume as one of the kind of, I don't know how you like to refer to it. One of the figureheads, would that be correct to say? Of the
I call myself the freshman recruiter, but yeah, I've been doing this more than most. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I assume you've had presumably quite a few offers to go to the Antarctic, or maybe even have you ever had people sort of say like, "Oh, we'll send you up and see what because it." There
have been some television production teams that have been swimming around for years that have wanted to do that, and they, I don't blame them for trying. By the way, I'm gonna kill my camera, see if it makes any difference. So when I did that, does it just say Mark Sargent, or has anything changed?
It just I just get the I don't know, we call your avatar.
Oh, that's good. That's good. At least it's just the avatar. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try to turn it on just before I leave. Just see if anything changes. Yeah, there's been some offers. Yeah, no question. But most of the time when it comes to production, everything falls through. Not for anything on our side. I will usually try to talk producers out of Antarctica because from a filming standpoint, there's not much to look at. When you're out there, it's like, whoa, it's a cameraman's nightmare. I mean, it's like all white. There's no depth perception. It's awful. So I usually try to talk them into places like Bolivia, the Salar del Uyuni, the salt flats out there, which I'd still love to go, but I haven't gone. As far as the space thing is, it's funny you mention that because only the British production teams have offered to do like a fundraiser to get me to go up to the ISS. Yeah. But nobody's done it.
That surprises me because I feel like it's quite how sort of cynical the internet always loves like, oh, let's prove whoever wrong. I'm kind of surprised.
You'd think so. However, I do believe the powers that be have realized that I wouldn't go for the carrot and the stick isn't going to work with me. like it did with like Joe Rogan, where you can't bribe me and you can't really threaten me, because why would I do it? And you can't take me up for real, because what you're going to do is you're going to make me sign a non-disclosure agreement, and you're going to say, and it'll be just like space cadets, where it's like, doesn't matter what you see, you tell people like you were that you were in space, and that would shoot the whole thing down. No one would believe me anyway, even if I did. But I would try to tell people, if I got the chance to go up, would I go up? Yeah, you bet I would. But no one's ever going to ask me. Because there's nothing to take me up to. It's same sort of reason why you never took up Neil deGrasse Tyson, you never took up Brian Cox, you never took up Elon Musk, and Elon Musk owns a freaking space company, and he hasn't gone up. Come on, you just don't do it. But yeah, if I ever got the chance, sure, I'd love to go. In fact, people don't believe me, but I said, look, I'd quit this thing. Love to. That was the whole point. The whole point of this 7 years ago was like, look, I go, just answer the question for me. If somebody can blow away flat Earth, I'll quit. I'll walk away. I'll go back to a normal life. But no one ever did. So I just kept getting stuck doing this, and just over and over and over, and more people jumped on the bandwagon. It's like, I appreciate it. But at the same time, it is a little bit irritating sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd space thing, sure, love to, absolutely love to. And hell, I haven't even gotten a threat yet. You'd think that like NASA would call me up and say, all right, here's what we want to do. Because if you want to get rid of me, the way you'd want to do it, again, if I was going to write it, you put me in a rocket, and then, well, you don't actually put me in a rocket. You blow up the rocket, then you take care of me somewhere else. And then that's it. It's like, oh, poor Mark. But then the conspiracy people would think that I was, removed from the equation.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, and sort of, part of that, because again, it's, obviously, as you just said, you're perfectly willing to, if there's evidence or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I say yes. I say yes to almost everything. Why wouldn't I? Are you kidding? A free trip to, because the publicity around it would be massive.
Yeah.
However, eventually you still gotta do it, and unless you have a way of faking it, Mission Impossible style, that I won't see through. It's like, look, I know all the tricks. It's like, okay, if you put me in a bus that all the windows blacked out, you drive me for a while, I don't know where we are, and if I have to be put to sleep for a little bit, well, that's not gonna work. There's all sorts of things that I know. I'm a huge fan of media, so I know the power of illusion, and I know what you can get away with, but there are certain things you can't, and maybe that's it. Maybe they just realize it'd be too much trouble. Why even try? Why even take Mark? I wouldn't do it.
I mean, what would it? So, what would it sort of take for you to?
Renounce my beliefs?
Yeah, because again, there's always this preconception that, obviously, I know you are very open-minded, but there's always this preconception that whatever someone does,
right,
you could just sort of, or conspiracy theorists can just sort of say, oh, well, that's not, that's not true. So it's like, what would it, if you know what I mean, what kind of thing would it actually take for you to? Would it be?
Yeah. There's two things that you could do. The first would be, and it wouldn't even have to involve me directly. It's this for the entire community. The first thing I would do is I would ask for 4K camera footage, whatever we're up to. I think it's 4K. You put a 4K camera on the capsule of a rocket facing down towards the command center, and you let that rocket go. You don't put it on stage 2 or stage 3. You make it to where whatever is going to leave orbit is going to go. It's never happened, by the way, in the history of space travel. And you let that camera run. You do not edit it. You do not splice it. You let that sucker go, and you let us analyze the footage. And, to where this thing's going far enough to where the Earth starts, turning into a globe in front of our eyes. Something that like didn't happen with the Elon Musk convertible in space. The Roadster in space. That was some of the most brilliant misdirection, and everyone fell for it. In fact, including me for a few seconds, which was they followed the boosters back down to NASA, the booster 1, booster 2, and landed right next to each other because that would happen. You'd never land those boosters right next to each other. And then I could almost hear the producers in my head. It was like, and cut to car. And there it was, the car and its profile with these 3 beautiful cameras on it, facing all these different directions. I'm going, wait, how'd the car get there? I go, where's the Falcon Heavy? Where's the big thing that dropped the car off, which was spinning slowly behind it in the background? And it's like it was never there. I'm going, where the hell is it? And it's because they didn't want to put it in the layer. They didn't want to deal with it. It was too tricky. So again, and the impossible car that should have blown up in all those different directions. So
I mean, it's it's one of those things, isn't it, where you sort of, even I sort of think, why don't NASA? They're not stupid. They see that flat Earth is becoming, more and more popular.
Right.
And you sort of think, why don't they just stick a camera on the bottom of? That can't
Why
for NASA? That can't be that big a thing to sort of prepare to make happen. Why don't they just do that? Release it. It would look great for people who already believe that the Earth is round, and for those that don't, it would be the kind of what shows.
By the way, the other things that didn't happen on that Roadster, on that Tesla thing in space. One was there were no logos on the car. You've got SpaceX and you've got Tesla, right? And there isn't a single sticker on that car. That thing should have been covered like a Formula One racer.
You think so?
And it wasn't. And not only that, but since it's the only car ever in space, there wasn't a single poster in any Tesla dealership ever showing that. That's your banner right there for all your things. But the other thing was not only that, the branding. First you didn't even use the flagship model, which is the S model. The big 4-door sedan. You used the 2-seater convertible. But with a 4-seater, oh my God! Think of the marketing things you could have done with that. You could have sold the whole thing to Disney. You could have put Stormtrooper in the driver's seat, Boba Fett, Groot, and Iron Man in the back seat. That thing would have paid for itself, and it would have been the most wonderful marketing tool ever. And yet, even though this has been a few years since this thing, no other car company has even attempted to put a car in space. What the hell? And then shortly after that, it's like, oh yeah, Elon Musk, by the way, is the richest man in the world. It's like, wait, how? How exactly? It's like it didn't. Again, I know economics. It's like everyone knew that Bill Gates was the richest man, publicly richest man in the world, because everybody owned Microsoft products. Everybody owned freaking Microsoft products, right? And then you knew that Jeff Bezos was the richest guy in the world because everybody has freaking Amazon, right? And then all of a sudden, this guy just jumps past both of those guys. And it's like, oh yeah, Elon's the richest man in the world. I'm going, what are you talking about? I see Priuses every hour of every day. I see Teslas every so often. But it's like you're telling me so many people sunk money into Tesla stock, the government, that the Tesla stock has become so expensive that now he's now the richest man in the world. It's like, whatever. It's just, again, people, and the general public, what pissed me off more than anything, I put this in my last book. I said, look, he's not Tony Stark. He's not. Why does everyone, hell, my brother-in-law, the same thing. It's like, oh, he's a genius. I'm going, how do you say this? It's like he's done nothing. He didn't invent PayPal. He didn't invent Tesla Motors. Yes, he had the government help when it came to SpaceX and then a solar company. It's like, why? Why do people keep? And it's like, and yes, he was an Iron Man too for like 10 seconds. Tony Stark walks by for 10 seconds. Like, that's why. That's why. It's like, come on. He's just, drives me insane.
Sort of talking about the kind of conspiracy and how it goes even to like the kind of small level, I guess. I was watching a Tom Scott video yesterday on YouTube, and he did a video about it wasn't anything to do with it was to do with bridges and the corrosion of cables in bridges, and he was looking at I think it's the Humber Bridge in the UK, and it was when it was made, it was the longest, I think, freestanding suspension bridge or something. Right. And he was mentioning how the colossal towers on either side. He was mentioning that it's such a long bridge that the tops of the towers at this bridge were supposedly a couple of centimeters further apart than the bottom because of the curvature of the Earth and stuff like that. And suppose just sort of looking at how this kind of theory and the effects of it kind of go down even into relatively small levels. Yeah. What would be your sort of answer to that? Would it be that when they were designing it, they deliberately made a slight in order to make it look,
or maybe not even deliberately, maybe accidentally? Because there are plenty of structures out there that we have looked at. I mean, the bridge is one thing, or I don't know, the Suez Canal, or the Roman aqueducts. How the hell did the Roman aqueducts happen? If they didn't know the curvature formula, and even if they did, how the hell would you apply it back in the day? How did the water run the way it did? So no, when it comes to structures like that, it's like, oh yeah, you might measure it. It might be a couple centimeters. Although truth be told, if it is a very, very large distance apart, it wouldn't be just a couple centimeters. You gotta remember the curvature formula is 8 inches per mile squared. So that's 8 inches per mile, which means that sorry, I know it's ringing. 8 inches per mile, which means that 50 miles, there's 1,700 feet of curvature, right? How far apart was this bridge? How far was apart with these towers? Do you remember?
I don't remember off the top of my head, no. But it was, I mean, it wasn't. I don't think it was quite. I'd probably guess like a half mile.
Oh, okay, that's not that bad.
It wasn't.
There are huge amounts of curvature that, when you get to distances, again, 40, 50 miles and so on, that we're just not seeing. The reason why, I don't want to draw this out because you already know some of this. The biggest game changer for us was the HD technology when it came to cameras. Which if you went back 20 years ago, you could have a $3,000 camera on your shoulder. You could zoom in on something on the distance. The resolution just wouldn't be good enough. It'd still be this fuzzy little blob, and you'd be able to see anything. But you can have a $600 camera now that you can zoom in on things that are 40 miles in the distance, which you should not be able to see. Meaning, when you crank when you're looking out in the distance, it's gone. Whatever you've seen is gone. It's like the boat, the lighthouse is like, well, it's obviously over the curvature. Really? Crank the zoom up. Now it's back in frame. And it's like, okay, how much refraction do you need? Because that's the only example people get is refraction. But I've got some wonderful videos which show horizon lines behind the objects that should be covered by the curvature. And that by far was the biggest hook for most of the people that got into the community, was long distance photography. I never even mentioned it during the clues. For example, I never once, because I didn't have any idea. It's like, back in 2015, it's like, wait, I wasn't even sure of the exact shape. And then people kept calling me out. It's like, kept saying, oh yeah, by the way, it's tabletop flat. I go, really? How do you know? It's like, because I've been shooting this lighthouse, over this body of water. I'm going, you're down at the beach? It's like, what are you doing down there? It's like, yeah, because water lays perfectly flat. I'm going, I didn't know that. And people, because water's easy to get to. And so people just kept running down to the beach with all these cameras all the time. I'm just making hundreds, if not thousands, of videos along those lines. And the consensus was, it's like, well, we can't find it. In fact, the challenge that I put, and I don't want to drag this out. The challenge that I put to science was, show me an object of, I don't know, less than 120 miles away, because there's a thickness to the atmosphere, which is which you can't pull into frame. Obviously you're never going to be able to see Cuba from Florida. You're not gonna be able to do that. But again, people don't understand physics. When people come back and say, why can't you see Japan from California? Why can't you see London from New York? And why can't you see, or England from New York? And why can't you see Mount Everest from everywhere? Because it's the highest place on Earth. And I go, because you're not breathing in nothing. I go, people forget that what you're breathing in is only 99% transparent. I go, and that gets compounded over time. It's why, whales underwater can only be seen, out to a few hundred yards. It's because of the thickness of the water. Yeah. Same thing with the air. You get out around 100 miles and that air gets really, really thick compared to something that's really, really close. I don't know where I was going with that.
But no, it was just something I remembered. I just thought, it's sort of, it's a very sort of, fascinating thing. I mean, but I think that's about the end of my about the end of my questions. Cool. But I mean, it was it's been sort of very interesting. Sort of if there's again, I think the sort of.
If there's any other resources you need, just let me know. If I don't know where they are, I can point you to people that specialize in them. So
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, I plan to, sort of write up. I mean, I try not to do, because I interviewed a guy called Darren Shan, who's an author for
what was his name?
uh, Darren
Oh, okay.
Shan, who's like he does like a lot of he's like an author. This was for, again, the online magazine, but was more to do books. And one thing I wanted to take away from that was not just write like a transcript, because they're okay, but like, interviews, when you sort of read them, so I always try and sort of make it a bit more, not prose as such, but it's not literally just question involved.
Right.
So it's sort of nicer to read. But yeah, I'll try and sort of write that in the next couple of weeks. But if there's anything, any sort of resources or anything that I need further clarification or whatever, I might chuck you an email. Or whatever.
Yeah,
That's
by
okay.
all means. And if you need any other UK resources, also let me know, because you've got some great people over there. So
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. But yeah, and hopefully it comes out as interesting. But it was very nice meeting you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
And because I know that I came up with I watched this video of James Buckley years ago, and then I don't even remember. It's probably my fault. I don't even remember why it didn't happen. And then literally a couple of weeks ago, I don't know what it was, jogged my memory, and I was like, oh hey, I wonder if Mark Sargent's still up for having a chat sometime.
Sure.
So yeah, it was, and who knows, if there's other, enough stuff that needs clarification, or if the piece does really well, whatever, can always set up another interview at some point as well, if if you're up for it.
Groovy.
But yeah, but so thank you very much for sort of agreeing to this interview, and it's been very nice having a chat and learning about sort of what you believe.
Yeah. I know I hit you with a lot of stuff, but it's just my style. So,
but no, I'm exactly the same. I'm always my ex would always had to sort of put up with so much. I'd ramble about something, and then that means I'd have to ramble about this. It'd be pinballing.
Right.
So I totally get it, and it's but it's all interesting stuff. I mean, it's genuinely sort of sort of interesting seeing because again, first question I asked, a lot of people just put it down to flat Earth, but it's like when you get into it, it's like no, there's a lot more.
Oh
to
yeah,
it, and
yeah.
When you go down the rabbit hole, it's very interesting. Yeah. So,
I agree.
But yeah, it's been about 2.5 hours now, so I'll let you go.
All right.
It must be about half. Is it half two over there?
Yeah. It's 2:20 right now.
Yeah, it's just got dark here.
All right. Well, anyway, thank you. And again, if you need anything else, don't hesitate to ask, and I will maybe talk to you in the future.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
Have a good one.
Let you go.
See ya.
You too. Bye.